To a boxy Picani. Good afternoon. My name is Chief Troy Bossman Knowlton. My traditional name is Bearhead. I come to you from the Picani Nation in southern Alberta and the president of the Blackfoot Confederacy. The alarming statements and actions the province has been taken is being met.
I get it.
Head to head by the chiefs of Alberta. We've come together to issue a statement and to strategize on how we're going to get the message out to the premier and to all of Alberta that this is treaty country.
Good. So far, so good. But by the end of it, it's like, we're the second-class citizens. As in anyone who's not them, like, we're the second-class citizens. The whites. But, so far, so good. But then, they're the OGs. We're the OGs. Don't you forget it. We're the OGs. It's like, can we all just be, co-equal citizens insofar as we're born? Insofar as we meet the anchor baby criteria even? Individually, no matter whose ancestry is OG, we ought to care whose ancestry is OG. You're not much of an individualist, bud, but then none of you are. None of you are much of an individualist, but okay, fine, worry. More Canada stuff to come.
Of separation.
But first, I'm being Pseudo Newsy.
Because there is no pathway to
Wait, what?
We're going to get the message out to the premier and to all of Alberta that this is treaty country.
Okay.
Talk of separation is really insanity.
I'm anti-separatist myself.
Because there is no pathway to
But I don't think myself a second-class citizen just because my ancestry ain't OG to the land.
Separation. You can have all the referendums you want.
All headgears is weird.
There is no way. And for the province to not engage with First Nations, if they're going to make statements...
I'm truthful. Y'all's headgear is weird. You guys want me to not be truthful to you? I think you all can take it, right? But, oh no, I'm sure I'd be booted out if I were physically there.
That really shows the respect.
They do that and more.
Respect that they have for the original inhabitants of this land.
So
join together like that really shows. And for the province to not engage with First Nations, if they're going to make statements like that.
I have never felt the provinces engage with my grievances either, but, I don't organize about it. Namely because I don't think I'd find, 5 or more people.
Really shows the
but other reasons too.
That they have for the original inhabitants of this land.
They don't have much respect for me either.
So I joined together with my brothers and sisters, the chiefs, 3, 6, 7, and 8, as well as support from First Nations.
Pretty sure if I took the test, I'd find myself to be neurodivergent, and they just have me chasing all kinds of non-divergent, neurotypical, carrots and stuff.
It's across Canada who know what we're going through. They know that the battles that we're embarking on. And what has happened today is separation. The rhetoric and insanity of separation here in Alberta has united First Nations on this land, but and all across Canada from coast to coast to coast. So I want to thank you, Danielle.
You're welcome. Well, this all seems rushed, right? Seems way too fast for me. And I'm not even in the cult, but even for me, this just seems all way too rushed. You guys really ready to move on that fast? You just buried the guy. The guy's just still kind of, he's not even cold, and you guys are moving on. You're moving on like, a divorced wife who got the good deal from the ex, That's how fast you guys are ready to move on, Is it because he was all social justice gung-ho? Is that it? I think that's it, right? America's? I don't know this chap, but... something tells me that, the odds are he's going to be nowhere near as social justice-y and as, Gazans should stop dying-ish and all that stuff. No, I think the Yanks are past it. And so, Italy's going to have to be past it or whatever, all their headquarters worldwide, wherever it is, but kind of the peak of the octopi's tentacles are still... Italy, somewhere thereabouts. But anyway, there's still these Opus Dei vibes. But anyway, I'll say the same thing I said weeks ago in the last video. Why is there even a Pope thing? Why is there even a new Pope thing? Watch, they're going to keep doing it. They're going to do it, and they're going to have more reverence for the Pope even when AI gets its way and AI manipulates the rest of humanity to, or whatever, just coerces, it's going to be like next level psychological manipulation. We're all going to be manipulated by AI, You know, the way like toxic men like Tate manipulate their poor victims. We're all going to be manipulated that way because we're going to stand in relation to AI as manipulatable as certain other victims stand to their perpetrators. We're all going to but what, the Catholics, like, they're still going to muster. Because they're just that fucking zealous. They're still going to muster more faith for popes. But yeah, why is there even a pope thing? That part's the through line. I like to do my through lines from one video to the next. So why is there even a pope thing? Pope Leo once leveled criticism at Trump and Vance. MAGA is not amused. Uh-oh. Trouble in Popeville. Pope Leo unhappy with U.S. immigration policy and won't stay silent. It's not even policy though, right? You know, they're just doing stuff. They're just doing stuff, Leo. They're not even bothering to make it all, you know, congressionally approved because, you know, most of Congress is just that cucked. But, you know, it's like you might just do something about it, but I assumed you wouldn't. But yeah, it's going to be trouble in Popeville and trouble in stupid dogma Vestigialville with the, you know, U.S. to Vatican pipeline. Yeah, apparently there's enough of a U.S. to Vatican pipeline such that this is even going to be, yeah, we're going to see some fireworks apparently. They're not happy. But I was presumptuous myself. My knee-jerk segment from a minute ago, yeah, that was me being presumptuous. I just thought because he was from Yankville that he was going to be a line tower and a toady, but apparently he's not. He's a complex figure. He's got mixed feelings about certain things. But then apparently on the proggy stuff, it's not even all that mixed. He embraces the marginalized. But then, you know, why even use the Voguish terms, Pope? Aren't you supposed to be like the Vestigial guy? You know, the Vestigial guy is not supposed to use the Voguish terms like, ooh, marginalized. Let's turn our brains off and just walk around eggshells because it's been dubbed marginalized. Let's worry about their feelings a lot more because, you know, they've been dubbed the marginalized. It's like the Pope is either going to be too vestigial to get it or he's just going to roll with the Voguish crap. They can never get the sweet spot with the popes. But, you know, maybe bonus points for him kind of hitting back and not being a line tower. And if you make MAGA have a meltdown, bonus points. But let's see. New Pope is less welcoming than Francis when it comes to gay Catholics. So, like, yeah, if you're Catholic, you're not allowed to be. If you're Catholic, then you're not allowed to be of the marginalized. But maybe the non-Catholics are allowed to be marginalized. But sorry, I was presumptuous and knee-jerky. I just thought, like, as long as it's American, I thought it was going to be line toey with the current administration. But apparently, no. Quoted as saying that some Western values offer sympathy to things that are at odds with the gospel. Yeah. But it's not that big a deal because the gospel itself is at odds with reality. So, hey, you don't have to worry about it. But then, you know, you're not going to get it. I'm going to do a bit more homo stuff later in this video, but I'll just keep it on the low early on in the video because I have to play it safe. What is the controversy with the Pope? How much time you got? Yeah, it's all that stuff that we're still talking about it. You know, I just somehow can't believe it. That, you know, the institution, the Vatican, is still a credible enough institution, even though there's all this, you know, all this stuff, still a whole lot of skeletons coming out of a whole lot of closets, but somehow it's not enough to just undo the whole institution. We need the institution. Whatever, I don't care what Leo is for. I just care that, you know, there's still people who want to put lipstick on, you know, Vatican pigs, and one of them's coming up next on No Avail. There's still people who want to put lipstick on, you know, Vatican pigs.
That's not very nice.
One of them's coming up next on No Avail.
Nice. But wait, what? Wait, where's the stuff?
Man,
look at it go. But where's the stuff?
I think it's time for Randy.
Go. Look at it go.
Look at it go. But yeah, this is going to be a video where clearly there's going to be a lot of meta stuff. Man, look at it go. Look at it go. This one's about Jordan. I don't do ones about Jordan much these days, but this one's about Jordan. Because I hadn't seen the clip. It's a clip, and I hadn't seen it.
Well,
It's such a bad clip.
Give me one way
For Jordan.
where you think it can go wrong.
It's the Three Musketeers.
And again, we can't forget your caveat, which you started.
It's edgelords for respectable audiences of various stripes. But yeah, it's like what passes for edgelords in public square.
What if you're not very smart?
But hang on, what is Sam
can't
asking?
forget
Sam's
your
asking something.
caveat,
Hang on. I gotta
Which
go
you
back.
think it can go wrong.
How can it
And
go
again,
wrong?
we can't forget your caveat, which you started with.
What if you're not very smart?
Well,
No,
so
I don't mean- I mean, that person,
so then you're basically.
You know, I think it's authority. The setup for this clip was, it's authority. When should you just mindlessly obey?
saying that the stupid people need their myths.
Yeah, obey the myth maker.
We smart people on stage don't need them.
The people who say the myth's not just a myth, it's something more. Of course, that's what it's about, because Sam's, kind of debating the two people who are kind of, he's kind of ambivalent on the myth, and Britishness in general. It's like, Britishness is too connected to the myth. We can't let go of the myth. And then this feller, is like that and a whole bunch of other stuff. And very schmaltzy about it.
Right.
But hang on. Sam's asking.
Caveat where you think it can go wrong.
It can go wrong.
And again, we can't forget your caveat, which you
Questioning the myth makers can go wrong.
What if you're not very smart?
Well,
No, I don't mean-
but
I mean,
then,
that's
so then you're basically saying that the stupid people need their myths. We smart people on stage don't
Shame.
need them. Right.
Shame. It's my. I'm gonna enter a Maoist struggle session against Jordy. Shame.
If you're not exceptionally cognitively astute, you should be traditional and conservative. Because if you are,
Hordes need their master.
if you can't think well,
Shame.
you're going to think badly, and if you think badly,
What was some of the specific stuff that Maoist crowds did? Of course, not to anyone who made sense against this type of stuff, the way I'm doing now. But what was some of the stuff the Maoists did? They did some horrible stuff, some kind of, other flagellation,
you're
not self-flagellation, like other flagellation.
going to fall into trouble. And so, if
But
you
hang on,
can't think
Jordan.
well, you're
Jordan.
going to think well and conservative.
Jordan says.
Exceptionally cognitively astute, you should be traditional and conservative.
You should be petrified like me. Because what?
if
That's the heroic way to be. It's to.
You can't think well, you're going to think badly, and if you think badly, you're going to fall into trouble. And so it is definitely the case, and this has been.
But to live heroically is not to really concern oneself over the outcomes to the point where you just do whatever it is that you want people to do, and defer to authorita insofar as it's traditionalist conservative authorita. Why can't the other people who can't think well defer to some other type of authorita? Non-trad authority. No, you only want the ignorant hordes deferring to certain types of authorita, as do you. But you're at least a little more ambivalent about the myth part. And you're against the myth, but, you think it's all about consciousness, because your wife writes books saying it's all about consciousness, or at least, affirming the hypothesis that it's all about consciousness, ignoring the will. So you're no angel yourself, Sammy. But the three of you did an event, and I didn't even know.
What would you call a cliche?
Hang on, let Jordan go in his full context.
If you can't think well, you're going to think badly, and if you think badly, you're going to fall into trouble. And so it is definitely the case, and this has been
But those groupie things can stir trouble too, Traditionalist criteria is a groupie affair. So, why let the group steer you into trouble? You think the average is gonna, not make itself felt? The average of the group, in whatever scheme you come up with, is gonna make itself felt. And, and the average is the representative of that which doesn't think well.
a cliche of political belief for a long time.
All right. We won't
if you're
keep him
not
slow.
very smart, it's better to be conservative. Because then you do what everyone else does. And generally speaking, doing what everyone else does is the path of least error moving forward.
If you're dumb,
Shame.
be a conservative, fall in line,
It's dark
and do
matter.
what everyone else is
Dark
doing.
matter does
He
great.
says the quiet part out loud.
Yeah.
He's basically saying that if you don't know how to drive,
The quit part. Yeah. See, people who are workhorses sometimes make their segments. Or at least they do timelines. I don't do timelines anymore much, even though I keep promising I'll do timelines. But some people are just so overworked they don't even get there. They don't have that many segments, but the few segments they have, they typo in their segments. It's not good in their chapters.
then don't use the gas pedal. That may seem logical.
Jordy said the quiet part. Jordy said the quiet part.
If you're not very smart, it's better to be
The
conservative.
quit part.
Because then you do what everyone else does.
Shame.
And generally speaking, doing what everyone else does is the path of least error moving forward.
Just for the shoes, just shame for the shoes, but okay, I won't make it about the attire, even though he loves to make it about the attire. But for someone who has, seemingly odd attire, you shouldn't want to make it about the attire as much as you do.
Doing what everyone else
Now,
does.
Douglas, now there's a man who gets to make it all about the attire, and no one can make a sound.
The path of least error moving
Respectable
forward.
shoes.
If you're dumb,
Doing what everyone else does is
respectable
the
shoes.
path of least error moving
You
forward.
don't have-
If you're dumb,
no,
Doing
you
what
don't have
everyone else
respectable
does is
shoes.
The path of least error
1970s shitty shoes, even though he's like a multimillionaire by this point.
moving forward.
if you're
Works for
dumb,
those
be a
shekels.
conservative, fall in line.
But
and
this
do
video
what
is
everyone
great,
else is
and there
doing.
was a thing
He
here.
says the quiet part out
The
loud.
issues.
He's basically saying that if you don't know how to drive, then don't use the gas pedal. That may seem logical,
Where are the heat maps?
but in reality,
Yeah. Heat maps.
what is actually happening is that the people who don't know how to drive are hindering the ones who do know how to drive.
Yeah.
If the people they put in the driver's seat choose the brake pedal,
I've got like a pilot's license, cognitively speaking. I'm not just I'm driving up in the air, but like most people are still driving on the road. Whereas I've got my pilot's license, analytically.
while in the path of a tornado,
But
then it won't matter
this
to them,
where
even
is
in the face of disaster.
where the
Because politics is not about results anymore.
where the heat
It's about
maps?
religious
this,
tribalism,
Yeah, but this part,
which is usually spread by people who don't understand what it means. You see, each circle represents what you care about,
yeah.
with the inner circle being your closest family and the outer circle being all things in existence. As the circles get farther away from the center, they represent broader and more distant things. Many conservatives misunderstood the circles as priorities and took this to mean that liberals care more about strangers than their own families. But that's a terrible misreading of the study because it's not an either or. The outer circles include the inner circles. So when you pick an outer circle, you do so with the understanding that you are including your closest family and everything else within that circle you chose. So what these heat maps are actually saying is that conservatives care about fewer things than liberals. Specifically, they only care about things that are closest to them
Exactly.
and that directly affect their own lives.
Yeah, like Liz Cheney or Dick Cheney and his daughter turning out to be Les, right? And then suddenly, we're not going to really be nice to the homophobes anymore because my daughter's Les, as it turns out.
Whereas liberals concern themselves with things
Not just Liz, Les, she's Les.
that affect
And
not
that's okay.
only themselves, but also things that will not directly affect them.
Yeah.
Specifically,
Lib
they
was
care about
less parochial, and even Prog was less parochial.
things that are closest to them and that directly affect their own lives. Whereas liberals
Because they're puny people. Cons, insofar as this is true, cons are just these puny people. I'm sorry to say. I don't want to essentialize this stuff, but there's heat maps. There's heat maps, and even fraudsters' approval rating among Republicans to this day shows that they're puny people.
concern themselves with things that affect not only themselves, but also things that will not directly affect them because they care about not only their families, but also strangers.
That's the libs.
That's why a conservative will often not be against us.
I didn't want this to be true. I would have mistrusted this, but since people are still running with the stupid Jonathan Haidt framing, the 5 types, this stupid crap, this just steamrolls through all that shit. You know, if I had to bank on something, I'd bank on these heat maps. The cons are just more parochial, more fearful, more stunted. It explains enough of contemporary America that cons are just that way. Whatever, not to call them cons, call them reactionaries, but, you know, they call themselves cons, so I'm going to call them cons.
A certain policy until it has a direct negative impact on their own life or the lives of their family members.
Yeah, like Dick Cheney.
That's why the face-eating leopards me
Voted for leopards eating people's faces. Party surprised when leopard eats his face.
exists. And that's why I say the COVID restrictions and the resistance to them were consistent with both the left and the right, even though they may have seemed to have temporarily switched sides in terms of authority versus rebellion. And that is because the left is more likely to care about not spreading COVID to strangers, and the right is more likely to distrust the experts. It's also the reason deference to authority switches sides when it comes to regulation versus deregulation, as the left worries more about safety and the right worries more about ease of business and profit. So in that case, deference to authority can temporarily switch sides.
It's, you know, it's the goose that laid the golden egg. The individually motivated or individualistically motivated entrepreneur. Can't deny that it's the goose that laid, you know, it's just the pie thing. The pie thing grows more. You know, some of it is making the pie grow more, as Canada is having to find out now. Some of it is about making the pie grow. And justice just has to go on the back burner.
But that on a long view, the weakening of the desire for liberty among the intellectuals themselves is the most serious symptom of all. It may seem that all this time I have been talking about the effects of censorship, not on literature as a whole, but merely on one department of political journalism. Granted that Soviet Russia constitutes a sort of forbidden area in the British press, granted that issues like Poland, the Spanish Civil War...
Why did the Brits have so many of these Soviet simps by 1946? They really believed in the project. If by 1946 you see famines, you want to cover them up, you're of the press in a you know, free Anglo country, 1946, the war's been won. And what do you do as a member of the press? As I've learned from Orwell, you're far more likely to want to cover up Soviet crimes because you're a Soviet simp in 1946 or thereabouts. But what he observed, I'm sure he kept observing onward. Die too young. Why do the good ones always die so young?
The Russo-German Pact, and so forth,
Yeah,
are
all
deep
kinds of famines. But hang on.
a sort
How
of political
pathetic.
journalism.
How pathetic was the UK press in 1946 and onward, I'm sure, covering up all kinds of stuff. You know, as pathetic as the pro-MAGA press.
Granted that Soviet Russia constitutes a sort of forbidden...
But they don't think of themselves as press-like. Yes, you're more of prostitutes for your pro-MAGA cause than the other guys you hate.
...area in the British press.
Covering up for Pete Hegseth. You know, can you get any lower? Yeah, it's like covering for Stalin. It's like covering for Hegseth. You know, equally inept and evil.
Granted that issues like Poland, the Spanish Civil War, the Russo-German...
But, you know, who knows? It's probably going to happen any second now. Exit will be a thing of the past. You know, it's just the second one just came out. So it's just like I'm going to throw in some Hegseth hate. But by the time this goes up, we'll see. I'm expecting Youthayet.
Act and so forth are debarred from serious discussion, and that if you possess information that conflicts with the prevailing orthodoxy...
Yeah, the orthodoxy, like Trump doesn't pick inept people, so we can't let Hegseth go yet.
...expected to distort it.
But how many more? How many more whistles are going to have to blow?
Or to keep quiet about it. Granted all this, why should literature in the wider sense be affected? Is every writer a politician, and is every book necessarily a work of straightforward reportage?
Yeah,
even under the
certainly the MAGA books aren't. There's zero reportage.
Tightest dictatorship. Cannot the individual writer remain free inside his own...
There's all manner of appeals to Manichaean worldviews, but there's no reportage.
Mind and distill or disguise...
There's anti-reportage in MAGA literature, just as Orwell's pointing out. There was a lot of anti-reportage in the British press in the 1940s because they were like, you know, all these communist simps. Can you believe it? You know, free, more or less free Anglo country. They win the war, and their intelligentsia is pro-commie.
Unorthodox ideas.
This is the human mind is such a feeble thing.
In such a...
Why does it feel like I'm one of the only ones who's got it down pat? why does it feel like I'm one of the only ones? You know, from art to politics to, you know, most branches of philosophy, I've got it down pat.
That the authorities will be too stupid to recognize them?
Yeah.
And in any case, if the writer himself is in agreement with the prevailing orthodoxy, why should it have a cramping effect on him? Is not literature, or any of the arts, likeliest to flourish in societies in which there are no major conflicts of opinion and no sharp distinction between the artist and his audience? Does one have to assume that every writer is a rebel, or even that a writer as such is an exceptional person? Whenever one attempts to defend intellectual liberty against the claims of totalitarianism, one meets with these arguments in one form or another. They are based on a complete misunderstanding of what literature is, and how, one should perhaps rather say why.
I'm sure he would have included just ranting online if he was around now, not just saying, because there was no way to rant and be heard back then, you know, I think. And so he just said literature, but it applies to folk like me.
Comes into being.
But who knows, maybe I'll go back to writing, or maybe I'll find a way to go back to being one of the people who does literature without hating the literature I produce. But hang on, this is an important point. I have to tie it a bit to my own self. I'm sure what he's saying now, you know, the struggles of the writer who wants to be honest, thoroughgoingly honest and truthful. You know, there's struggles. You struggle against the ebbs and flows of the dullards in your society and in the world. You struggle. But I'm pretty sure he would have included vloggers. It's just he wasn't around for the net. So this applies to me, what he's saying.
Is in agreement with the prevailing orthodoxy ideas in such a way that the authorities will be too stupid to recognize them? And in any case, if the writer himself is in agreement with the prevailing orthodoxy, why should it have a cramping effect on him? Is not literature, or any of the arts, likeliest to flourish in societies in which there are no major conflicts of opinion and no sharp distinction between the artist and his audience? Does one have to assume that every writer is a rebel, or even that a writer as such is an exceptional person? Whenever one attempts to defend intellectual liberty against the claims of totalitarianism, one meets with these arguments in one form or another. They are based on a complete misunderstanding of what literature is, and how, one should perhaps rather say why, it comes into being. They assume that a writer is either a mere entertainer or else a venal hack who can switch from one line of propaganda to another as easily as an organ grinder changing tunes. But after all, how is it that books ever come to be written? Above a quite low level, literature is an attempt to influence the viewpoint of one's contemporaries by recording experience. And so far as freedom of expression is concerned, there is not much difference between a mere journalist and the most unpolitical imaginative writer. The journalist is unfree, and is conscious of unfreedom when he is forced to write lies or suppress what seems to him important news. The imaginative writer is unfree when he has to falsify his subjective feelings, which from his point of view are facts. He may distort and caricature reality in order to make his meaning clearer, but he cannot misrepresent the scenery of his own mind.
There we go.
He cannot say with any conviction that he likes what he dislikes or believes what he disbelieves. If he is forced to do so, the only result is that his creative faculties dry up.
Yep.
Nor can he solve the problem.
There's people who don't have creative faculties because they do that.
By keeping away.
So it's harder. When you have creative faculty, it's harder. It's harder to prevail when you have creative faculties.
Controversial topics. There is no such thing as genuinely non-political literature, and least of all in an age like our own.
Well, I would just say non-ideological. There's no such thing as non-ideological literature, but maybe you felt, you know, ideology. Ideology too is politics.
Fears, hatreds, and loyalties.
But yeah, I like the part about the scenery of the mind. You know, I just want to, you know, shove the scenery of my mind down the world's throat,
political
so the world can benefit. I didn't want to use too flattering a term. Let's just say so the world can benefit.
To the surface of everyone's consciousness.
Yeah.
Even a single taboo can have an all-round crippling effect upon the mind, because there is always the danger that any thought which is freely followed up may lead to the forbidden thought. it follows that the atmosphere of totalitarianism is deadly to any kind of prose writer. Though a poet...
Well, I think, if you think about the taboo of incest, which, contributes to health and probably other things too, wealth and learning, just learning, the taboo on incest contributes to knowledge and understanding and stuff because we just don't have malfunctioning humans. But it's very incompatible with another taboo, the taboo on eugenics, because, the taboo on incest is powered by a eugenic concern. And yet we have an equally strong, if not stronger, taboo on eugenics. So it's like funny, sometimes taboos themselves are incompatible, but like the dullards can't think about it critically.
At any rate, a little
the taboo on incest, like if you deny the taboo on incest is powered by a eugenic concern, we do not want dysgenic outcomes, so we're going to have a taboo on incest. But then there's like, eugenics has every bit, if not stronger, a taboo on it. And this is kind of probably a glaring example where, proper literature has been prevented because no one wants to stick their necks out. You're going to be trashed and lied about. No one wants to stick their necks out for eugenics. It shouldn't be coercive. It should not be coercive. But, the whole selection thing, the whole thing's made out of eugenics. The reason we can think as well as we can is to thank you, eugenics. But the people who want, ultimate, unlimited, free healthcare, they never say publicly subsidized and taxed, but free healthcare for all the citizens, are very often the people who it's like, you can't worry about dysgenic outcomes, you asshole, because then you're like the Nazis. You can't worry about dysgenic outcomes. And all these malfunctioning people we're going to have. Thank you, eugenics. But the people who want, ultimate, unlimited, free healthcare. Yes, to connect it back to the healthcare, it's going to be unaffordable. It's going to be a bunch of malfunction and entitled malfunction. So what they say about mass immigration or the welfare state, you got to pick one. I would say the same thing in terms of like you can't have, bountiful healthcare coverage for your population unless you encourage eugenics, non-coercively at least, unless you're just honest about it. If you're dishonest that, eugenics only turned bad when it was this glaring coercive thing and super racist thing, that's what made it bad. But a kind of colorblind eugenics that's non-coercive, unless it's like actual cases of incest. And then, even Germany ruled for the, pro-eugenic cause, overruling that, brother and sister couple who just wanted to keep having kids. And they had all these malfunctioning kids. And like Germany, Germany ruled eugenically against the incest couple, against the bro and sis. Like I learned about it reading that Diana F. something essay. That was a good essay. Just Eugenics. I read it out as a video. Good video. Diana F. something brought up that German case. And I'm like, yeah. It's income. You can't have these deep taboos on both incest and eugenics. You can't have it. And you, especially if you're a pusher of the taboo, on eugenics, if you say, no, you can't be concerned over dysgenic outcomes, that makes you ableist or something, and deeply prejudiced and hateful. Then you also can't agitate for absolute, unlimited, free healthcare coverage for all, even the illegals. The prison, everyone gets, extended dental and all this stuff, but no one can say anything eugenics, no, you bad, you Nazi. Like, no, you got to pick one. Just like you got to pick mass immigration versus welfare state, you got to pick, your unconcern over the malfunctioning people who'll be born and your willingness to give all those malfunctioning people free, unlimited healthcare. It's going to be unaffordable. I'm talking to you progs, in case it's not clear. I'm talking to you progs. But coming up next, I go hog wild outside again. I go hog wild outside. Let us go back to hypotheticals, hypothetical land. So you have to share an island with one of the two types of people. You can't be alone on the island. You got to share the island with two types of people. You get to choose which one of the two types you get to share the island with.
you know, whatever. It's a bountiful island. It doesn't have to be Cannibal Island. It can be a civilization. You get to be in a type of, you know, walled off civilization, and there's two types of people, and you choose one of the two types. And all you get to know is one type of people, when they're out and about and they're walking, and they've got an itch, and it's on their ass. And they turn around and they see people walking behind them. And as a result of the fact that there's people walking behind them, they will not scratch their ass. You know, in the best case, they'll try to divert the doing of it. Or they'll look for some corner they can sneak into where no one's looking, so they scratch their ass. But, you know, it's fairly crowded. There's people behind you. And, you know, there's people, and especially if the people behind you are awfully close, you know you're not going to be able to pull it off. So you just withstand the itch instead of scratching your ass. You know, so that's type 1. That's class 1. Class 2 is people who just, I got an itch on my ass, I'm going to scratch my ass. I'm going to scratch my anus. Look at me or not, it doesn't matter. I'm going to scratch it because it's an itch and I'm not harming anyone and I'm not deceiving anyone. And everyone understands, you know, what an itch is, and everyone understands that the anus is not absolved of an itch. So, you know, even though there's people behind him, it's just they're not that concerned. Rationality really pulls through. Right, we can summarize them that way. You know, the latter group, the latter type, is the type for whom, at the end of the day, rationality just comes through behaviorally, and there's no limit to it. And let's just understand the kind of society we live in is where that's just mortifying to a great many people. A great many people truly do in these ways that really no one ever remarks on. You know, I think in a slithery kind of avoidance of remarking on it. But the perfect example is the scratching of the anus and the willingness to scratch the anus. You know, you don't have to be enthusiastic about it. You know, you just have to be the type of person for whom, at the end of the day, everyone understands what an itch is. Everyone understands. You know, no body part is exempt. And so it's unreasonable to expect that person who's in front of you, if you ever see them scratching their ass, and you're like, oh, they scratched their ass. And no, this didn't just happen to me. I just thought about it. Because it's such a good, it's such a, you know, dynamic. It's such a contrast that cuts to the core. I'd rather, you know, if I knew nothing else about the person, you know, I'd rather know that than their political affiliation or than anything else that's, you know, kind of peculiar about them. I'd rather fucking know that. I guess there's other stuff, you know, I'd rather know that, you know, they're not a psychopath beyond that, or no other personality, antisocial or whatever type of personality disorder. So setting the overt disorders aside and just fixating on the person who would not and who would withstand the itch because they don't want to creep someone else out, be that a perfect stranger or, you know, someone that you kind of know. See, I do it. I'd like to think I do it. I had to test myself. I'd like to think I do it even with the type of person who I barely know, like, you know, a newfound neighbor. I'd like to think that I do it even with those types of people, the types of people that I'd have to see again, likely. You know, much less a stranger. I'd like to think I'd be able to do it always because I want to know. It has to be at this point. If I, at fucking 38 years old, have not mastered the art of the rationality that at the end of the day always pulls through, then what the fuck am I wasting all this time on this fucking joke of a planet for? The only way you can respectfully live on planet Earth is if enough of your behaviors are those types of behaviors where the rationality is not going to be cucked by concerns over acceptance and, you know, all these stupid things. You know, here's a critique of inclusivity that no one's made. You shouldn't give a fuck whether they include you. How's that for a fucking critique of inclusivity? You know, we shouldn't care about this inclusivity shit because you shouldn't care if you're excluded. Because, you know, 9 times out of 10, you're being excluded from something banal and onerous and fake. And the fact that the vast majority of people would withstand the itch, and doubly so, you know, if it's a guy who's trying to score and there's a bunch of dames behind him, let's just be clear on that. Doubly so that, oh, that man would not scratch his anus even if it was the worst itch of all time. You know, he's got his eyes set on those dames and doesn't want to creep the dames out. So, you know, there's a lot of places I can take this to, but let's just leave it at that. Who would you rather be on a deserted island with? There's resources, there's stuff. It's just there's a lack of diversity of types. Who would you rather be on with? We can control for personality disorders. You really want to be a bunch of socially cucked people? Do you really want to be in society? That's the society we have right now. It's a society of all these socially cucked people who can't let their misanthropy just reign, who always have to put their straitjackets on their misanthropy and then sublimating it by these, partisan tactics. These are all partisan tactics aimed at constraining one's own misanthropy. Because people just don't want to alienate that many people. Do you understand that? Do you understand why misanthropy always gets used as a pejorative, almost always? And it's almost like a sickly tone in the person's voice. The person's voice takes on a sickly sounding tone when they utter the word misanthrope. These are precisely the people who would not scratch their anus, who would not dare to. Because they need to be socially accepted by enough of the people on this godforsaken hellhole planet Earth. They need to be accepted by enough of the people. That's why they cleave to partisanship. It's a sublimation. No. Let rationality pull through. Come out as a misanthrope. There's nothing pejorative about it. It's truly the last taboo. It's not anything more philosophically controversial. It's just this attitude of misanthropy. This is the last taboo. This is the true final taboo. It doesn't have to be a contentious issue like procreation. Even if we're all wrong on procreation, we're not wrong on fucking misanthropy. Look at the world. Just look at the world. You don't have to look at it long to validate your misanthropy.
Man, look at it go. Look at it go.
Now, if there seemed like there was an excess of wrath and dread and contempt and all these negative affect combos, there was, right? But I guess mostly wrath. But I am dreading, I just know I'm dreading my haircuts more. I try to space out my haircuts as much as humanly possible. But the hair just doesn't do what it used to do, so it's harder to space it out. My record is like 17 months. So as a result that I can't space out my haircuts as often as I used to, I have more of these encounters with barbers. I've never built a rapport, as they call it, with any barber. I think in my life, certainly not in Canada. So I always, found the Hank Hill episode amusing, where he fell out with his barber. It was like the furthest thing I could relate to. But, it was such a brilliantly written episode. It's probably King of the Hill's top 5 episodes. If you've never seen anything from King of the Hill, watch the episode where Hank falls out with his barber over the most trite thing, as I recall. But it's been a while. But yeah, over the most trite thing, and then this just comedic drama ensues. Hank's life is turned topsy-turvy because he can't replace his barber. So, but I'm kind of thinking how lucky I was to be able to have had the kind of hair where I was able to space out my haircuts. And now that is no more. And as a result, I'm having these more frequent encounters with barbers. And I'm just noticing precisely what I'm talking about here in terms of the anus itch. I'm doing a kind of scratching as the barber, who is, I'm sorry to say, often very dull-witted, trying to make the lamest kind of small talk. And I'm just kind of pushing back more with each recent encounter, and I don't even regret it. But I'm wondering, if I'm kind of negging them by lecturing them when they use the word boring. I'm talking about I'm really striving for early retirement. It's like, I'd be too bored. And then I go into this lecture about how you'd have to be dull-witted to be the type of person who ever gets bored. And like the haircut just started. But see, I am well aware that this is the sort of thing that might sabotage the haircut. I'm well aware of that as a possibility. I guess I either place it too low, or now increasingly that, I've been sabotaged haircut-wise. I just hold nothing back. If someone uses boring, I'll tell them, in a matter of words. I'll tell them, I guess indirectly. It's because they're dull-witted. They don't have these perceptive faculties, or they care not to, build it. You can build this. You just got to be willing to smoke a lot of drugs. But yeah, as a result, I have my freaking haircut sabotaged. Because yeah, I'm negging them and they must be noticing. But I'm not gonna stop. I'm not gonna stop going in there. I guess I could learn to cut my own hair. That would be one way out of this. But you know, if they don't know how to make proper chit chat, if their chit chat is of the lowest caliber, like yeah, I will not hesitate to tell them what I think and signal contempt. But you know, like how many haircut sabotages am I really gonna have? So yeah, you know, I haven't tested myself with the ass scratch thing, but you know, I'm testing myself gradually with each recent one. You know, with each recent encounter, I go to a new place and it's like they always say something. Maybe I should just do what are they called? Yeah, the skinheads. Maybe I should just be a skinhead. You know, without the Nazi, the bat symbol. You know, I guess one wouldn't always have to pick between the scratchers and the non-scratchers. I guess you could also, you know, turn your attention to the observer. What kind of an observer would you like to have on the island? You know, and what if there are some people who would do one but not the other? As in they would like judge others for scratching their ass, while at the same time, I guess in that case it would just be a pure failure of conscientiousness. You know, you judge the other for scratching their ass, but then you can't help but scratch your own ass. See, I don't know what I'd do with those kinds of people. You don't even know whether you want those kinds of people. You know, the kind of egoic, asocial people. You know, you don't want too egoic an asocial person either. But, you know, you can also judge the observer, not just the scratcher, in this peculiar dilemma that I've raised that really ought to be kind of, you know, spread further. So next time you chat someone up and you get the sense that they're a social coward, I'll use the other C word in a sec. I think all she heard was, I'll use the other C word in a sec. Oh. Of course, I meant social cuck, not social coward, but she's approaching, so I say social coward. Anyway, yeah, you can choose between the scratcher and the non-scratcher, and then the type of observer who would judge either positively or negatively, and then kind of the oblivious observer who would judge negatively, but then would themselves scratch their ass because they're just that indulgent. Yeah. Well, what would be the fourth category? Because there would then have to be a fourth category. I guess the most saintly person would be the type who would neither judge negatively when they see someone else scratching, but would themselves be too socially cucked to do the scratching. So there's your four categories. You know, I guess if you want a bunch of pushovers in your society, you can opt for that fourth one. But I would just opt for the very first one I described, the person who would, or was it the second one? Yeah, I think it was the second one, who was the person who got it, that if I have an itch, I'm gonna scratch it, and then simultaneously knew not to judge others when they would observe the same thing in them. If they were lucky enough to be in the society surrounded by them. That's all for now.
You know, we kind of have like a pretty low glass ceiling in the overtly political space, because no matter how many of us do the overtly political thing that we're doing, a lot of the country just doesn't consume this type of content. They're not going to consume the overtly political podcasts or watch the overtly political YouTube shows. So actually reaching what I call blue-coded sociocultural spaces.
We're on the prowl. We're on the prowl.
And did the now boys.
That's why they wear the baseball caps often. They're on the prowl for the blue-coated. He admits it. See, at least Pac-Man admits it. They're on the prowl for the blue-coated folk. They want their vote. Just like they're on the prowl for the young, disaffected men. Because like, oh shit, the internet shit matters. The internet shit matters. Stop with the basement belly jokes. Stop with the basement belly jokes. We need these men. We need these men for the vote. Stop with the basement belly jokes. It's like, no, don't stop with your basement belly jokes. Bring it. Because I got a retort. I'll embrace the basement.
How many hours you did it? he told a lie every 15 seconds, but it did not matter because it was unstructured and authentic in a way that resonated with people and did much more to help him than the fact that he told 4 lies a minute did to hurt him, because that was sort of like already baked in. And a lot of these spaces have become red coded. If you go on TikTok, if you're looking up how to wholesale houses or how to be a better car salesperson,
Oh, I missed it.
or
Oh, this one's stupid too. Yeah, that was kind of the same thing, right? Yeah, it was the same.
90% of it
Oh, boy.
is
Good luck, America.
red coded.
Good luck, America.
Where it might not be overtly part of the subject matter, but it's like these are kind of right-wingers. They're sort of loosely in the MAGA sphere. The left needs that, and I don't know exactly. You know, I'm in an overtly political space, so I don't know exactly.
It got to be
but I think
more
that that's
scammy.
Could not agree with that more.
If you want to be a leftist influencers in America, you got to be more scammy
Could be Gavin
and more multi-crafted.
strategy. I think slightly different than
You
what I was
can't
saying.
just know stuff if you want to influence politically. You can't just know stuff. You got to be more scammy.
It is probable, in some such way, that the literature of totalitarian society would be produced if literature were still felt to be necessary. Imagination, even consciousness, so far as possible, would be eliminated from the process of writing. Books would be planned in their broad lines by bureaucrats and would pass through so many hands that when finished, they would be no more an individual product than a Ford car at the end of the assembly line.
No, Shakespeare was awesome. I just wanted to point out the irony, the abrupt irony of it being the birthday when I decided to listen to what Orwell had to say about the local communist simps he had to deal with, qua literature, and the prose writer.
It goes without saying.
But I'm not saying
at
Shakespeare
writing, books would be
succumbed.
planned in their broad lines by bureaucrats and would pass through so many hands that when finished, they would be no more an individual product than a Ford car at the end of the assembly
He
line.
was independent as far as I know, but I can stand corrected if need be. He was Shakespeare was independent. Shakespeare did not succumb to customary, pressures and such, and wheeling and dealing for contracts and such. I don't think so. I think he was independent. So happy birthday, Shakespeare, as far as I know. But, whoever knows when it's that historical. Whoever knows.
Goes without saying
Timothy Snyder knows.
that anything so produced would be rubbish. But anything that was not rubbish would endanger the structure of the state. As for the surviving literature of the past, it would have to be suppressed or at least elaborately rewritten.
What's that about the state, though?
Meanwhile, totalitarianism has not fully triumphed everywhere.
State in tandem?
Our own society
In tandem with glory and nationhood.
is still, broadly speaking, liberal.
Oh?
To exercise your right of free speech, you have to fight against economic pressure and against strong sections of public opinion.
Yes.
But not as yet against a secret police force.
Not as yet. Not
You can say or
as
print
yet.
almost anything,
Not
so
as yet.
long as you are willing to do it in a hole-and-corner way.
Yes.
But what is sinister, as I said at the beginning of this essay, is that the conscious enemies of liberty are those to whom liberty ought to mean the most. The big public do not care about the matter one way or the other. They are not in favor of persecuting the heretic, and they will not exert themselves to defend him.
The big Volk. What was the last one? Big lawfare. No, how about Big Volk? The big public. Let's hear it.
The big public do not care about the matter one way or the other.
Big Volk don't care. Big Volk don't care.
They are not in favor of persecuting the heretic, and they will not exert themselves to defend him.
Can Big Volk be made to care? Some would say it's built into the nature of things to answer no. Someone to answer in the affirmative, someone to say it's maybe would be nice, but Big Volk can't be made to care, so quit bothering. I would say yes, quit bothering. But since most people will not quit bothering, let's try to persuade Big Volk to care, or not, at least not to, contribute to the, stuff like the El Salvador thing, There shouldn't be a punditry flame off. It's like, no, let's ignore the El Salvador thing because the econ thing is more effective at swaying the stupid, whatever, independence. It's like that's the punditry off right now in the States. Because everyone understands, yeah, Big Volk don't care what even the way they voted has contributed to purely innocent people in due, free, non-existent process, undue free, due unfree, and duly unfreed lack of processes were sent to effectively concentration camps.
They
Gulags.
are at the once two
Stuff Anne Applebaum writes books on. The Gulag thing happened. Even though Anne Applebaum's written books saying Gulag, look at this exhaustive details. The exhaustive details behind why Gulag be bad. You should not do business with the people who do the Gulag business. But America's done business with people who do the Gulag business. So yes, Big Volk ought to be made to care, even when Big Volk's hands are clean. But in this case, because of the way they voted, Big Volk's hands aren't clean in why innocent men were sent to gulags. You ought to care about it.
Sane and too stupid to acquire the totalitarian outlook.
Who is?
The big public
The big
do not care about the matter one way or the other.
Big Volk.
They are not in favor of persecuting the heretic, and they will not exert themselves to defend him.
Yeah.
They are, at the once, too sane
They were half better then, but now they do both.
and too stupid
Wrongs of commission and omission.
to defend him. They are, at the once, too sane and too stupid to acquire the totalitarian outlook. The direct, conscious attack on intellectual decency comes from the intellectuals themselves.
Jesus. It's more muddled now, I would say.
It is possible
It's more muddled.
Russophile intelligentsia, if they had not succumbed to that particular myth.
Oh, are you a populist or an elitist? Which one are you? It's like, there's so much malice to go around. You're two camps.
Would have succumbed to another of much the same kind.
It's about the people versus the 1%. Oh, it's about the stupid rent seekers. But then, even I would be a rent seeker if I could get away with it.
But
no, that's a lie.
At any rate, the Russian myth is there, and the corruption...
But, the rent seekers are all the people who, dupe morons to pay their Patreons to co-write videos.
Causes stinks.
No, I got a bad attitude.
When one
now.
sees highly educated men
Bad
looking
attitude.
on indifferently at oppression and persecution, one wonders which to despise the more,
Yeah.
their cynicism or their short-sightedness.
Yeah.
Many scientists, for example...
I just listened to, Sam and Douglas discuss Gaza like it's December 2023. That's how they discussed Gaza. Douglas came on, and I guess, there was a subsequent paywalled version, but they discussed the Gaza thing, and they made a lot of great points, but they made those points like it's December 31st, 2023. That's how they made those points. I was like, well, other stuff has happened that's not as flattering, Are you guys not paying attention to the whole thing where, they done blown up and the cell phone recorded that, it was just they done blown up the helpless, hapless, aid people over and over, helpless and hapless aid people. They done blown them up. That ought to be mentioned in the free section of the podcast. But, they have to be Manichaean about it.
Are the uncritical admirers of the USSR.
Yeah. Coming up in the future, I'm going to do an excerpt from a thing in the future, because the thing is long, so I'm just going to do a small excerpt on it. To clean up my Shakespeare conjecture. I should never conjecture about Shakespeare. It's a settled matter. Shakespeare hated the man of the costume, and Nietzsche shows it here, so I'll play it. But the whole thing's too long, so I want to just do an excerpt from it. This is, next time, or a few next times down the line, on no avail. But crucial, because I mentioned the Shakespeare thing, and Nietzsche understood that no, Shakespeare was one of the good ones.
Yes, men think
write, print, speak, and teach philosophically. So much is permitted them.
But what are the quarterly
There's
earnings?
there's some non-PC stuff earlier in this.
It is only otherwise.
It's techno-feudalism coming, folks. It's techno-feudalism.
Yeah. Also, this is kind of timely
We
as
get
well.
some sane people to form a sane enough political coalition that can win, which doesn't seem like it's, we're all going to be ground up for the techno-feudalists.
In action, in life. Only one thing is permitted there.
Yeah.
And everything else quite impossible. Such are the orders of historical education. Are these human beings, one might ask, or only machines for thinking, writing, and speaking?
Yeah, the techno-feudalists.
Goethe says
Those who will be influenced to be the underlings of the techno-feudalist overlords.
Shakespeare, no one has more despised correctness
Oh, how hyena-like they all continue to seem.
of costume than he. He knows too well the inner costume that all men...
Hang on, this is the Shakespeare.
One might ask,
He got
are
Shakespeare,
only
yeah.
machines for thinking, writing, and
He
speaking.
gets to the Shakespeare part.
Goethe says of Shakespeare, no one has more despised correctness of costume than he. He knows too well the inner costume that all men wear alike.
Yeah, I should never
You hear that he
underestimate.
describes Romans
I
wonderfully.
should never underestimate Shakespeare, but I have to get to the very end of the thing. Even though I start, Nietzsche said the Shakespeare thing, and then 8 freaking minutes later I get to it, and then it's too long a segment. But that's okay, because I can just do a chunk from it.
The chief cause of intellectual diversity is to be found in the brain and the nervous system. This is a fact which somewhat lessens the obscurity of the subject. With the brutes, the intellect and the brain are strictly adapted to their aims and needs.
Yeah, and with
man
with
alone,
Destiny too, apparently.
there is, now and then, by way of exception, a superfluity.
Yeah, and Destiny's not one of the exceptions.
If it
There
is
is no
abundant-
superfluity in Destiny.
Hang
hang on.
Way of exception.
But with man?
With man
Yeah,
alone, there is,
alone.
now and then, by
But-
way of exception, a superfluity,
But Destiny excluded.
which, if it is abundant, may yield genius. But
No,
ethical diversity,
I
it
was
seems,
mistaken. Man-child ain't genius.
proceeds
Because
immediately.
Man-child's too desperate. No one texted him nothing. Man-child's too desperate to get back in the good graces. Even though, he hasn't really suffered yet. He hasn't really suffered any kind of substantial dip. But he's so desperate. What, are you titling your videos creatively now that it's not literally you? It's not literally me? And everyone's supposed to get it? No. You know that what the implication is. It's like a bunch of people are going to think, oh, they were stupid enough to actually do it to Destiny 2. Let's click on the video. I'm not going to click on the video. No. It was the Goldberg guy. It wasn't you. So you're not meeting the threshold the Chop describes here, Destiny. You're more like among the brutes. Because you're that all about aims. You're all about aims, so you're all about what the brutes are about. Listen, I'm going to play it again.
Nervous system.
I'll go back. Listen.
Fell with his identitas
Okay,
indiscernibilium.
stop now. Why you shouldn't mistitle the truth. Destiny, you've mistitled the truth here. Because you're that desperate for clicks.
Cause of intellectual
And he bitches too. It's like he gets an ungodly amount of hate, and he still bitches.
Diversity.
Like, oh, it's not enough. I've been lied about. No, you haven't been lied about. You did the thing.
to be found in the brain.
You fucking...
The chief cause of
Yeah,
intellectual
yeah.
diversity is to be found in the brain and the nervous system. This is a fact which somewhat lessens the obscurity of the subject.
But, this is also an important subject, the war plan thing. I'm just all about the cyber foes and, whatever, frenemies. But yeah, I'll do this a bit later too.
With the brutes, the intellect and the brain are strictly adapted.
Destiny shouldn't be this pathetic. Destiny should... It was the goal. Change this title. Change this title to include Goldberg.
To their aims and needs. With man alone, there is, now and then, by way of exception, a superfluity.
But not
which,
all.
if it is
Not all are
may yield
accepted.
genius. But ethical diversity, it seems, proceeds immediately from the will. Otherwise, ethical character would not be above and beyond time, as it is only in the individual that intellect and will are united. The will is above and beyond time, and eternal, and character is innate.
And it has to be.
That is to say,
There's stuff that's, tough to figure out, even if that's accepted, but
there's more stuff that's tough to figure out if that's not accepted.
Is sprung from the same eternity.
Yeah.
And therefore it does not admit
wretched eternity
any but a transcendental explanation.
Sure.
Perhaps someone will come after me who will throw light into this dark abyss.
Yeah, well, tell you what, it's not gonna be Destiny and his mistitled videos. And moreover, look at these videos. It's all just, personality advertised, personality flavor. Kid knows his topics. But it's just too, he's just too reliant on getting a big enough mass to watch. And so it's just kind of, why do you care? Why does anyone who watches you even care about Hernania and Ethan and Hassan? Why are these just such staples of his channel? Right? He gets mad views, but it's just not enough. So he has to make these personalities, these staples of his thumbs and video titles, and no doubt the content. These other personalities, right? It's more, there's a lot of, substance, but the flavoring, the way it's all advertised, it's like the personalities are such, the personalities are just such a huge staple of it. So, the time has come. The time has come. You just got to click a couple of things. God, you got to click 3 things. Preposterous. But yeah, the time has come. It doesn't matter. The algorithm will still bombard me with him. And fine, if anything catches my eye, I will watch. But I've never allowed myself to start caring for these characters he cares for. Hassan, Ethan, whoever else. It's just, but that's what he knows he has to do. I doubt Destiny is anywhere near as curious about these. Just as you can see the acting here, he's acting. Oh no. Yeah. The same goes for the non-visual aspect of him. The stuff he does content on. It's just all these personalities no one should care about. Right? And your video titles should be titled as if it's like, the way Simpsons titled each episode's title. Yeah, that's how your videos should be titled too. But no one gets it. Oh, here's the one from way back that I just did that segment on. Yeah, everything's about, some one or another type of antagonist or partner, but that's not how it should be. You should seem like you're more lone wolfish, Destiny. And if I see that as your pattern, then I just might resubscribe. Not that you'll notice. So yeah. The themes, what was it? I was going to do a whole video called A Date with Destiny. It was going to be a laugh fest. But as it stands now, that's going to be relegated. That's going to be relegated to Rumble only. Because I just don't care anymore. You're not going to eat up you're not going to eat up a video of mine on YouTube, Destiny. That's just how fucking underwhelming you are. It's all just antagonists and partners and stuff. You ought to be your own protagonist, but, you're just too much of a, I don't know what you are. The problem with the left, stop purity testing. What is this, 2016? Yeah, that's what it says. It's ever 2016. That's truth. Truth about Destiny. And it doesn't have to be that way. I'm sure he's smart enough to figure out how he can crawl his way out of the, forever 2016 land, forever 2016 vibes. He's smart enough to figure it out. But then he'll get less clicks. So I have to unsub. But just so there's no confusion. I'm not unsubbing because he did the thing, the creepy thing. That's not why I'm unsubbing. The coercive thing. No, I'm unsubbing because it's forever 2016 land in Destiny territory. And I'm above it. One video later, and I haven't unsubbed from Kid. I unsubbed from Destiny. I just unsubbed from Destiny, but, made me recall that I did that segment asking, should I unsub from Kid? Because somehow I'm subbed to Kid. I don't even know how. And then I left it to the audience. I don't think anyone participated. But I was like, should I unsub from Kid or finally pick a video of Kids to watch? This is the new one. Everything about work sucks. Yes. Tell me something I don't know. Yet again, tell me something I don't know. I don't think you will. But that's okay. It's understandable, you know. If I were a kid right now, I'd probably be making similar enough content. But because I'm a veteran, I'm a seasoned vet, yeah, kid ain't got nothing to tell me. But, you know, one can still observe just in passing that, you know, kid was made. And kid believes kid shouldn't have been made. You can glean what kid's about just by the video titles. So, yes. But, you know, when you grow up even more, you're going to, like, find that work can at least be minimally revealed. Because your rants on work are going to be such freaking epic rants that maybe it like redeems work by like 0.001%, because that's just how good your rants on work and your colleagues are going to be if you're capable of mustering. You know, so work provides after work entertainment. We can put it that way. Work provides after work entertainment. And, you know, a bunch of delayed rants that, you know, should have followed the first hard work examined video. Yeah, the stuff that was promised is not being delivered because there was just a lot of stuff that happened in the intervening time. But yeah, there's more work stuff to come from me, but this is kind of kid ranting about work. Adulthood killed my inner child. Redeemed. I said revealed. I misspoke. I meant to say redeemed. Work can be at least minimally redeemed. Frickin' misspoke. Probably because I'm overworked. Overworked and underslept. Hey, talk about segues. But yeah, I misspoke. I meant to say work can be at least minimally redeemed because you can rant on work afterwards, as you seemingly are trying to do, right? Are you having fun or are you just being serious about it? Let's see if I can gauge. There's a smile, so you might even be having fun with it. So yeah, you can minimally redeem work, even though it's not to be credited to work. It's going to be credited to your imagination if you know how to make rants with the insufferableness of work and all the colleagues and their foibles and their lack of imagination. You know, in a way you can say that in terms of rants, work's the gift that keeps on giving. In terms of just fodder for rants, it's all about work. But I don't think you're going to take it to the comedic way, the comedic path. Yeah, you're just made too miserable by it because you're too fresh to it. Because you're a kid, you know. But if you stick with it, sooner or later, it doesn't stop being insufferable. It's every bit as insufferable. Work is, and a lot of the other stuff that has to do with adulting. Right? He doesn't like to adult. Adulthood killed my inner child. Yeah, it stays every bit as insufferable. But at least you kind of, you know, fine-tune your comedic chops and you put a comedic spin on most things. And that's how you cope. So you can learn how to cope better. That's the one good thing with age is you learn how to cope better. But yeah, kid, I don't know if kid's going to be able to muster to learn how to cope better. Look at all this. It's all just it's all just whiny. That's the thing. Why adulting has to be so complicated. Parents love to brag about their kids. I'm tired of existing. So yeah, your parents should have thought better of it. Hey, you know what? Clearly, some parents need to think better of it more than others because the product is sometimes way less satisfied. Some products are way more dissatisfied as products of the parents than others. You know, some folks, they hate to be here and they can't even make hay out of it. Others are dissatisfied, but at least they know how to make hay of it. But kid just doesn't know. But anyway, just tell me what to watch from kid, because everything is just so damn, like, been there, done that. But it seems that you have to do the kind of predictable, telegraphed, safe content. This is content that's kind of safe for pessimists. Pessimist wants to commiserate. Oh, I can commiserate.
It's really just scummy to have kids at this point, but we know all these risks. When we have the data about all these objective risks, it's just downright scummy. It's not more than dubious, you know, it's not impermissible, but it's dubious, but it's also scuzzy, because you lot know.
Who knows what they know?
The risks get a lot of press.
They know 1 minute and they forget it the next. But I did a lot more on risks, and that's coming up here because I couldn't do it in this video because yeah, now it's at 2:03, but it's going to be even longer by the time I'm done. But then I had a lot more, but it had to be shelved.
elsewhere, which is right here.
Who knows what they know.
So also, just to point out, this wasn't a sufficiently long setup for what's about to happen. What's about to happen is you're going to hear an explosive, something like 20-minute outside ranty audio. There's calm parts, but early on it's very, very ranty. And I just need to point out the timing of the whole thing. This was recorded in the summer of 2024. And every video I uploaded between then and I guess right now, I wanted to throw those in. But each video was either way too long or the topic was way too, the general thrust of the video was way too inhospitable in terms of what I'm actually ranting about. And so is this, so is, the Psychopaths Propagate video. But I just finally have to action this because it's just been that many damn months since a crazy 20-minute outside rant. And, I got to dispose of these long outside rants, and I got to start disposing of them very, very soon. So that's coming up here. But yeah, this was, I guess.
They know 1 minute and they forget it the next.
Yeah, I guess I do the same
but
thing.
I did a lot more on risks, and that's coming up here because I couldn't do it in this video.
This video being toward a coherent left-right war, but, that wasn't the first video I wanted to do that in, or the last where I don't end up throwing these audios in. No, that was like video after video after video. And that's the case with many other things too. I just been reshuffling a lot. Just a lot of reshuffling. And it sucks. And I know no one cares, but I just got to vent about it out loud. But here's a crazy explosive outside 20-minute thing.
Well, I talk about these risks as preconditions, but realistically, what about all the groups? You know how many freaking groups there are out there? Cultural, ideological, now increasingly ethnic and racial. But even just these generational divides between individuals. Boomer, doomer. I guess doomer is not a generational thing, but they even take it generationally to create, just these dueling groups. Whatever, Gen X, I'm supposed to think of myself as a millennial because I technically fit the demo. I don't care. I'm not going to think of myself as a millennial. But, I'm supposed to have all these, acrimonies for non-millennials in different ways, depending on how you slice the pie. And it's like, no, I'm going to have acrimony along ideological lines, not cultural or attitudinal even, just ideological lines, and I'm sorry to say in my weaker moments, intellectual lines. That's what's going to move me. But other than that, nothing. But because there's, the stakes are high and there's just people fail the ABCs. Whether it's ultimately to do with their moral or intellectual shortcoming, or both, but split across some, majority-minority lines, then I'll do it. Then I'll have acrimony. But I'm not going to have acrimony along all these other ways because I see how it's led to all these escalatory brinkmanship things. It's the worst when it's, state actors, I guess. State actors who have access to nukes. But all these groups, they're not going to call a truce. That's the point of this. One of the preconditions, one of the reasons why I'm saying that, you're being procreatively reckless. All you encouraging procreation is you guys, in your endeavor, because you believe that better simp than limp. I'm going to simp for an ideology, so better simp than limp. I was like, no, always, in every sense, better limp than simp. But to encourage making more when we see the escalation. Just in terms of all these groups, ideological, cultural, racial, I can go on. They're not going to call a truce with each other. This is not going to go away.
I'm sure there's a lot of that.
And yeah, I guess I'm kind of getting lower in here by the minute because there's just people around me and I'm just ranting because I don't want to do it later. But yeah, watch, there's going to be no truce. This is my kind of big prediction. Of all the escalations we've seen, take, Jew versus Muslim as an example. These camps, they're not going to call a truce in the next decade, 2 decades. I'm willing to bet on all this. There will be no reconciliation. There'll be no reconciliation within America among blue-red, and there'll be no reconciliation outside America among all these other gajillions of, interest groups that have, some lobbying or some kind of grassroots bullshit behind them. None of these groups are going to call a truce. And that's a big risk if you want to bring yet more people into the world. You're kind of layering all these unresolved problems onto them. So, you know, you might score a point or two against me if we see a truce, but we've not seen it. In fact, the internet itself has been a kind of escalatory tool for all these group conflicts. I can't think of a single group conflict that's kind of been, you know, in the books prior to the internet that the internet has made better and brought closer to truce. Not a single one. It's just been more escalation. And so you got to think it over. But it seems none of you are able to think it over. It's just worse. Just how many religious procreators there are. How many religious procreators there are on Twitter. And I keep going back to Twitter. This is bringing out the worst in me. Especially when they talk about like how, you know, people who believe certain things that I do or that are kind of adjacent to what I believe, like they talk such trash about those kinds of beliefs. And I'm like, you know, like violence is bad. I'm going to say it right now. Violence is bad. But if you people saw some of the things I conjure when I go off on these religious procreators who kind of smear me, even though they don't know who I am. Like a lot of my conjures just end up with me, like violence is bad. But a lot of my conjures, when I'm super happy and high, end up with just me rocking out to a great song and just, I'm sorry to say, just eating a man's liver after the fight. No, maybe that's how I win it. Maybe that's how I win it. Maybe it's after the fight, but I just eat their fucking liver. If they're one of these procreative fools who have the freaking gall to say I'm the pathological one, whereas like pathology oozes out of their every post. But how they talk smack about views they don't understand on Twitter. And they want to bring yet more kids. Never enough kids. Make needy feeders. Make needy feeders. That's all they're doing. They're making needy feeders. And they think I'm the fool for not doing so. And I'm like, I conjure shit and I just, you know, violence is wrong. These are just my kind of private thoughts that I have to finally air out. I just end up eating a certain man's liver.
Man, look at it go. Look at it go.
Well, the entertainment portion of the video will end the moment I get home because I got more serious things to say about, you know, when to have acrimony in the context of left-right divide, how to do the left-right thing better. I have more to say, but I want to do that when I get home. For now, let's do another, you know, entertainment segment because, of course, no one should eat livers. So as for another entertainment segment that's nonetheless, you know, informative in terms of helping you go down the kind of notional rabbit holes that I like to go down on. You know what? If it's an anti-natal culture, they still keep saying it. I keep doing videos pointing out how it's not an anti-natal culture in the West or even the West Coast. Nothing close to it. I keep explaining how, and then back on Twitter, like they keep saying it. It's an anti-natal culture. And I'm like, it just doesn't matter what I do. Of course it doesn't matter what I do. But like, another thing about that is, suppose that, well, what the hell should we do when we see a former known person, maybe an acquaintance, maybe a good friend, but a long ago, and when we see them for the first time in a long time, we see them pushing those carriages. They can be alone or with their whatever spouse or significant other, but you know, they're pushing those carriages, and you got on famously in the past. You got on famously with them, but it doesn't have to be. You can be one of those neutral people, or maybe even one of those people you didn't get along with famously. Pause because dog walker. I lose concentration. I guess I'm not that low in hip after all. It's always easier when there's a lot of traffic to be low in hip. But yeah, so, you know, anti-natal culture, you know, but what the hell are those of us who have these perspectives? It's not a world worth bringing anyone into, and it's not going to do your mind much good as someone who does it, because then you're going to have to change so much of your lifestyle. But you know, suppose we run into someone we knew, a known of person, maybe as good as a friend, but back in the day, and it's been a decade or two, and you see them pushing those strollers, those carriages, whatnot. What the hell is our reaction supposed to be? Can our reaction be anything other than, you know, even in the strongest case, only halfway cucked? It wouldn't be the case if it was truly an anti-natal culture. We would have a 100% non-cucked interaction with one such person, you know. Now, cuck doesn't mean that, you know, you can't tell them, I'm glad your kid looks healthy. You can say stuff like, I'm glad your kid looks healthy. But, you know, it's been a while since you've seen them, and you've seen what they've done, and you go, oh, God, he did the stupid thing, right? But you can't just, unless you're super low in hip, you can't just go up to them, you know, they might give you a high five, handshake, a fist bump, ew. It's the kind of thing they used to do. Maybe it's why you weren't friends. You were at most acquaintances because they like to fist bump. But let's say they go right back in on that fist bump. You know, because you've moved now, so you're in a different part of it. So you run into some of the people who also moved way back. But you see that they've gone and done the stupid thing. Because you see them pushing those strollers. They've done the stupid thing. So are you going to have a 100% non-cucked reaction as an anti-natalist? And as they're going in for that fist bump, you just step back and you just raise your hand and point, oh God, you've done the stupid thing. But I'm glad your kid looks healthy. You're not going to do that. You know, even if you were erstwhile besties and you took the piss out of each other in the worst possible ways, and maybe you were defensive more often, but neither here nor there, in your, you know, brutality, defensive brutality back in the day, but you know, they were the unlikeliest candidate, and you see them pushing those carriages, those strollers, whatever the fuck they're called. You know, wheeling the baby. They're wheeling their baby. And you're like, God, I did not see this one coming. I foresaw that you might have done your share of stupid things in the intervening time since I've last seen you, but I could not have foreseen that you went and you crowned yourself Derp King by doing one such thing. You know, it's like even the people you have a lot in common with sometimes as youths, you know, specifically in terms of this derision toward the greater culture. God, we spewed nothing but derision. It was fun. And then you move, which you should have done a long time ago because the city sucks. You know, but I'm not the dweller, like in the Duckman scene. I'm not the dweller. I'm not that bad, but I recognize the city sucks. Burn your new shoes again. Yeah, so you move, but then you run into some of these formerly known people. It can be a nemesis even. I guess with a nemesis, it would be a bit easier to just step back and go, God, point either to them or to the baby, but make sure they're not carrying. But it's BC, so it's unlikely that they're carrying. But yeah, you know, assess their state of mind. Assess whether they're, you know, one of those parents who really shouldn't be parents. And if they seem normal enough, even if it's your nemesis, are you really going to be that uncucked that you're going to tell them what you really think if you're an anti-natalist? I don't think so. I think you're going to warm it over, you're going to sugarcoat it, because indeed it's not an anti-natal culture. It's the least we have to ask joggers behind. I might do another pause. God, it's a Sunday. I'm not supposed to be disrupted by human creatures. This land is supposed to be mine, damn it. But yeah, that's just another thing. But I'm going to get back home and do me some serious talk on what this video started out about. I just got to throw some anti-natal spice in the middle here. I just got to do that. You know, it ain't no video nowadays, apparently, in 2024, unless I throw some anti-natal spice in it. I guess they're really slow joggers, but I keep turning around and it's like, you know, you might ask, why is this guy turning around? It's because I'm doing an audio. No, not a voice note, an audio. So yeah, you can show acrimony even if you feel it, because it's not an anti-natal culture. You can't even give your honest to God pushback. Because one of the epistemic pathologies, one of the many epistemic pathologies in this world is people can't have these procreative discussions and not take it personally. They can't help but take it personally because they can't help but have real ends. They don't know of anything beyond their real, personal ends. They know not of ideal ends. And so how can you maintain social harmony with people who know nothing of ideal ends and only know their real ends? I'm finding it harder. And yeah, that's just one of the things where it's like I don't need the hassle. I don't need the across the street. I'll cross the street because they're gaining on me, but they're super slow. But yeah, I don't need the freaking hassle of me and this channel blowing up or even getting, insanely popular, but short of blowing up. I don't need the hassle of that. Because then it wouldn't be like just killing the occasional mosquito when you get one of your, dissers, one of those people who shows up to diss you. But, if it's once in a blue moon, as with a channel as low-key as this, then it's almost fun too. The occasional mosquito, great. But maybe you shouldn't have fun killing even the occasional mosquito, but I do. So, it's Coquitlam now, so I see the occasional mosquito, which never happened in downtown, but it's like, even if it's two at a time, maybe it's fun. It's a bit of a challenge. 3 at a time, maybe if you're feeling, what is it? Thrill-seeky, thirsty. But, you hit that stride in terms of what's nowadays considered major league players. It would be like being swarmed, no matter how good your arguments are, no matter how much your content can cure all these epistemic pathologies. If you get swarmed by mosquitoes, you might kill like a few dozen of them, but then they just keep swarming you, and all you're going to want to do eventually, if you have a healthy psychology, all you're going to want to do is just say, I want to get the hell out of here, and you run away from the mosquitoes, right? And how they have perfected the art of the smear campaign, where like even a man is, psychologically kind of steel-proof as Sam Harris, like even he had to leave Twitter. Because they've so perfected the art of the smear campaign and, shoving it into his face. He had to leave Twitter. He said, I didn't want to hate people. But no, that's not it. No, he was just sick of seeing his own smear campaign being successful anytime he logged into Twitter. So he's like, I'm done logging into Twitter. So that's what it's like. It's like, it's fun to kill the occasional mosquito. But when you're swarmed by mosquitoes, and you can kill, dozens, maybe even hundreds. But, let's say you've killed 1,000 of mosquitoes, and there's thousands more pouring in. It's like you're just going to want to get out of there. And so that's why I know that the obscurity is a blessing in disguise. But at the same time, all these points I'm making, they're not making the rounds, and it bugs me. So it's like someone want to mirror this in a slick kind of way. I welcome it. It doesn't need to be me. It needs to be some replica of what I've said. Because how would they go about it in terms of having to counter it? God, their smear campaigns. Even a man like Sam Harris couldn't withstand it after a while. Had to get out of the kitchen. Because every now and then someone shows up to diss me. I see that they're a fool. I'm like, I'm going to have such a fun time displaying to this fool as I diss them back what a fool they are. It's going to take less than a minute. So I found out ways to be more curt. Twist the knife. But, that's like 1 or 2 mosquitoes. But if it's a swarm of them, no, there's going to be too many people who diss me, and I'm just not going to have enough time to diss them back and show them for the fools they are. It's like that would get the better of me psychologically. So I'm not 100% emancipated. If I were, I'd be able to withstand. I'd be able to have the Buddha pose as a bunch of mosquitoes are swarming over me and sucking my blood. Who the hell can sign up for that? Who the hell can withstand that for whatever each of our threshold is? We have these different thresholds, I guess, but it's just been so dismal. The comment section, half the time, for at least a year and a half now, half the time, it's either it just vanishes. I get people messaging me saying, like, I leave a comment, and it's a long comment, but then YouTube just swallows it up. And then maybe within that half the time, it's not that it vanishes, but it's on the back filter. When it's like, especially when it's like one of the regulars, it's like you... Yeah, it's just so frustrating. Like the long-term sustainability of the channel hinges on, you know, people being able to comment, people not being disincentivized from commenting. And that's not even getting into the views. That's just the comments. You know, these videos should easily get 1,000 views a pop. Whatever the retention rate is going to be, I can handle the low retention rate because people's attention spans are not cut out for what I do. I demand a lot based on what the current attention span figures are. But see, if you truly craved wisdom, you'd alter your attention span and slowly mold your attention span to be able to endure, I guess, more and more of these videos. But easily, regardless of the attention span, each video should easily get 1,000 hits a pop. It's just not happening. I get it. I use a lot of online slang. I talk fast. The videos are long. You know, I don't crow out the swear words. But I think mostly I'm shadow banned. But it's a freaking problem if it's this dismal. Because the comments have the time just either wiped out or on that backup filter from the regulars that's going to disincentivize commenting. I don't like commenting is one of the ways that like you might be able to like you get a rope thrown you're in the quicksand. The one kind of rope you can have thrown at you is the, you know, at least there's some comments quick, but like YouTube's even seemingly gone after my commenters for all these stealthy reasons, at least in my backyard. It's not good for the long-term sustainability of the channel. It's just not. But no, I don't want fame. I don't want infamy. I don't even want to be credited for these arguments, although these are all my babies. Someone replicated. I'm just morbidly curious what these assholes would say about it.
The United Nations says that Gaza is again on the brink of famine. Israel has refused to let food, water, fuel, and medical supplies in since early March.
Back to 2025.
There is growing international disquiet amongst Israel's allies.
Disquiet.
Emmanuel Macron has described it as shameful.
It is.
And the
Israel
UN
sucks.
is pleading.
Israel, they too are a puny people. They too are, but let's go to the images. This could have been in the images, you know, from my lengthy rant. This could have just gone straight in the images. Why can't I bring it back?
And to ensure respect for international humanitarian.
Won't go back. It's not a YouTube thing. It's a blue sky embed, so it doesn't do what I need it to do. But look at this.
On the brink of famine. Israel has refused to let food, water, fuel, and medical supplies in since early March.
Kept refusing.
There is growing international disquiet amongst Israel's allies.
Israel sucks. Well, I said that, but it's true. It really does suck.
Is pleading for action.
Yeah, it shouldn't be about pleading though, right? Like, I get it, you know, they're afraid of the jihadists, you know, who isn't, you know? But you can't go quite this far just because you're afraid of the jihadists. You can't go this far.
Genocide. And to ensure
you know, I moved to, yes, ethnic cleansing. I moved to yes on the ethnic cleansing.
Or you say instead that we did all we could.
See, I can't pause it. This one's old. I remember this one.
Area in the south.
You know, it's funny. I remember the images based on which images I used shortly after the war began. But, you know, like the last round of the war. But
and occupy Gaza.
Yeah, so they said it now, right? They said it, you know. Gavir, Bibi, they all said it. It's like, yeah, that's what we want to do. Pleading up and down for like a year and a half. Like, genocide is a slander. I guess they can still wiggle around from the genocide claim if you keep in mind the nuances between genocide and ethnic cleansing. But now it's like, how do they wiggle around the ethnic cleansing? They admitted it. They admitted it. It's like, yeah, ethnic cleansing. Fuck off. What are you going to do about it? Like MAGA does with the racists. That's kind of what Israel does. The officialdom, at least, in Israel, and maybe more than 50% of the population. That's what they do. That's what they say with the ethnic cleansing charge.
you're an ethnic cleanser. Yeah, fuck off. What of it? It's like, yeah, so they kind of maybe saw MAGA do it with racism, and so they figured we'll do it with ethnic cleansing. But it's just awful.
Say the massive new offensive will begin when Donald Trump leaves the Middle East.
Sure.
That's
it's a Trumpy ceasefire again. But yeah, I mean, come on. It could have gone in the images, you know, and I was so prescient again. I hate to brag about how prescient I am, but that shit from 2024, I was saying no stalemate. It's like the Israelis heard me. It's like the Israelis heard me and say, yeah, no erasers on pencils.
Nation says that Gaza is again on the brink of famine.
But, you know, I'm sure the jihadists aren't slowing down either in terms of their hostilities and such.
Refuse to let
so yeah, no truce. I was right last summer. I was right. None of these groups are going to do the truce. The blue-red aren't going to do the truce, you know. Russians, Ukrainians ain't approaching no truce. It's all coming to a head. You know, it's all going to accelerate. So stop making more. Stop making more. Just to point out, you know, I said it, no truce, and then 2025 proving me wrong proving me right, I mean to say. Proving me right every single day.
And medical supplies in since early March.
Yeah, let's do full screen. But yeah, you can't
international disquiet amongst Israel's allies.
You can't pause when it's a blue sky in bed. You can't pause. But, you know, there's worse stuff going on, I guess.
It is a predatory way to think. And now, it happens, it carries its own punishment because it, in fact, does not work. But the very fact that Trump wants to believe that it works,
Look at that.
wants to believe that it works, tells you a lot about his approach. He thinks of economics as a system of spoliation and predation and robbery, not of mutual benefit and gains from trade.
Yeah.
That's why, because he thinks like a thug.
Well said. If I could just say in parentheses, I think your insight
Thug
about
life.
One of the virtues in Trump's mind of tariffs is that it puts him at the center of things is a really good one. You know, in Trump's mind, one of the downsides of markets is that they're decentralized, and the upside of tariffs is it fulfills his tendency towards main character syndrome. He, in effect, gets to decide who's disadvantaged or who's advantaged, and in so doing, he gets to distribute those spoils one way or the
Trump's
other.
will, fraudsters will,
underestimated
as distributive justice. Fraudsters will just was distributive justice
In this case,
per fraudster.
Syndrome. He, in effect, gets to decide who's disadvantaged or who's advantaged, and in so doing, he gets to distribute those spoils.
Distributive justice has been solved. Just defer to Trump's will.
One way or the other.
All those schemes, and no, it was just we needed to defer to Trump's will.
And I think that's an underestimated.
Yeah, apparently people are calling and groveling.
Motivation, but behind the tariffs. I'm glad that you said
he lets up too. But apparently we're supposed to believe a bunch of people are calling and groveling. But then it's like, why did he let up?
Out here.
In this case, it's going to carry with it its own nemesis, because it's very clear he started this recession.
Yes,
14 minutes. They haven't discussed the Canadian outcome yet. They haven't, and Hub, Hub Canada, but it's so about this econ stuff because they're, they're like Marxists in a way. They're very much, pocketbook concerned. Canada must prosper evermore.
If it won the presidency, there would have been no recession.
Not like psychologically, no. We have to keep the growth thing growing.
Yes. I have no guarantees.
So it's like
there would have been no
that's
recession.
they know the U.S. They know the U.S. butters the bread. They know there's no trade like trade with the U.S. Sean Spear his heart is bleeding because now we have to figure out a different partner to partner up with. They so want to go back to that, NAFTA shit.
In trade, his recession, his global recession. And not only that, but whereas he thought he'd be the lord of the world telling everybody what to do, starting about now, you can see the flop sweat beginning to gather. And he's now beseeching, in his turn, having wanted to be beseeched, he's now, make a deal, anybody. And I don't even need it to be a good deal.
You guys are gutted over pocketbook stuff.
I just need something that I can say, we have a deal with the Comoro Islands. I've signed a piece of paper with my signature on the Comoro Islands on it. We've got a deal. I'm making all of these deals because he is the one. He needs exit. And I
Canada
think he's just
yet.
in the
It's
past
not
few days.
Canada. It's
understood
Canada
that.
election day. Way too U.S. slanted, the hub.
But he doesn't realize how desperately he's locked and how high the water is.
Frum's on thin ice with me too. Tail end of that first episode of the Frum show. What's his face? That mayor guy, I always forget his name. You know, Frum's first episode. Frum finally joins the podcast venture stuff. And, you know, it's like all on YouTube, just like the rest of them. So it's like, in one sense, is it a podcast if it's just all on YouTube? It's just a YouTube video. You became a YouTuber, David Frum. That's what happens. They all seem to, you know, Sammy's all over YouTube these days, too. Sammy spaced out his stuff. And nowadays, like, Sammy's all over YouTube, too. And they all say, I have a podcast. But the truth freaking is, you all just started a YouTube channel after all. Sam's been replicating himself on YouTube for years, but now he started with the short clips. I'm seeing way too much Sam on YouTube all of a sudden. Because, yeah, they all know what it takes. They all know what it takes to stay competitive. But just say it. You opened a YouTube channel, David. You didn't start podcasting. Although you did that technically, but, you know, it's YouTube's where you get most of the views, you folks. Anyway,
Needs
we
exit.
haven't discussed
And
Canada yet. It's not Canada. It's Canada election day. Shame, hub.
Way
too U.S. slanted. Shame for being so.
But he doesn't realize how desperately he's locked and how high the water is.
Frum's on thin ice. Why? To tail into that first episode of the Frum show. What's his face? That mayor guy, I always forget his name. You know, Frum's first episode.
Rahm Emanuel.
Frum finally joins the
hang
podcast
on.
venture stuff.
Let's close this. We don't need
and,
to.
you know, it's like all on YouTube, just like the rest of them. So it's like once.
Then I distracted myself.
It's just a YouTube video. You became
but I was going to do
David
the
Frum.
Rahm Emanuel.
That's what happens.
What did I take umbrage with here so much that I just didn't go back to the other Atlantic David Frum episodes. I guess he didn't open his own channel. His podcast is on the Atlantic, so I got that wrong. You know, he uses the Atlantic's platform to be on YouTube instead of his own platform to be on YouTube. So same difference. But what about this? Why did I say no more of the David Frum show after the tail end of the inaugural episode, the Rahm Emanuel episode? And I'm going to keep ignoring until David shows some capacity to introspect on something horrible that Rahm Emanuel said at the tail end of this. Let's see if we can find it. He said...
Afghanistan pullout and constantly telling the American people the economy
he
is
said
great
he
when
wants
they
to
were trying
make,
something
in order for the students
you
to
have the
bounce
financial
back.
meltdown that we were talking about.
You know, there's this loss of knowledge. The students are now running from behind because of the loss of knowledge, because of the school shutdowns in 2020 and 2021. And how afraid are the David Frums and the Rahm Emanuels of the world that the students will not be able to keep up because of the lost time. Because you can only learn stuff when you're in the classroom.
Oh.
Can I find it?
The bankers.
No, it's not about the bank.
That they'll be free and fair.
Okay, I can't find it now.
And, and the 25% that
I should have looked this up.
And also the poor. You know, slide that everybody in educational is.
Here we go.
Talk about. And that's a different subject. As dealing with absenteeism that has now become chronic, and it's now in the high teens, and it's across the board. Anything north of 7, pick your number, 7%, 8%, whatever it is, you can't matriculate. And start to reimpose more time, not just in the school, more time on one-on-one instruction. I will also say, though, one of the costs here that's crazy.
Yeah, you're not going to be able to afford the one-on-one instruction thing in the typical public school, you know? Unless everyone's taxes are going to go through the roof so that each student can get the one-on-one time. No, instead you just ask students, what are you into or what are you good at? You let them learn on their own. You know, all the knowledge is out there. It's just if you knowledge yourself up outside the institutional context, they won't let you take the test. Like, even if I'll pay out of pocket to have them grade the test, that's all they need to do is grade my tests. But no, I have to have gone through the test prep through your stupid schools. But like some people don't need to pay and go through the test prep through their stupid schools. You know, even as youngins, even before post-secondary, you know, you're not going to impose a whole structure on my lifestyle. Maybe you can impose it when I'm really young, but past 10 or thereabouts, stop imposing a whole structure on my lifestyle that I have to wake up 5 days a week and go to a place when I'm not a morning person. But then he says, like, the summer breaks ought to be cut. That's a solution to make up for this lost time. Is summer breaks ought to be cut. I don't know, severely reduced, not like fully canceled, but severely reduced. And from who? In the video, what was the video? What was the video called? I forget the video. Yes, Why Psychopaths Propagate. At the tail end of that video, you go there and there's a segment of From who says he has PTSD because of law school. So they took his money and they gave him PTSD, and yet he's still an utter complete zombie on this educational stuff. He's like, he really thinks the student who aces the test, like that student will ace the test in the next semester. Like that's how these people think. Like when you ace the test, you've absorbed the knowledge because you've aced the test. No, they just cram the info into their brains. The test is not a longevity result. It's a short-term result. But that's okay, because on some level, you assholes know that you're just, you know, vetting for steady compliance half the time. It's all about steady compliance. It's going to be servile enough to prep for the test, enough to ace all the tests. It's not a cue for knowledge absorption. It's a cue for servility. And this jackass wants to cut kids' summers, not even by half, but by 2/3. And then From couldn't push back on it. From couldn't fucking push back on it. Even though From half-jokingly said he has PTSD because of fucking law school. And I'm like, that's it. I'm not watching the From show anymore. I'm not watching the From show if From can muster the critical thought to tell this fucking turd to go fuck himself for trying to cut kids' summer break because kids aren't learning at a pace they need to learn at. No, fuck you. Fuck you for thinking you even deserve our time 10 months out of the year.
Child's life, David, is in the classroom.
What?
That's crazy. 20% of a child's life, David, is in the classroom.
More than 20%.
If you want a child to succeed, you got to invest in the other 80%. So we as a city, as a state, invest in the 80% to back up and support the 20%. No teacher by themselves.
He said at some point here, he said, I should have looked for it before. I should have queued it up before, but whatever. He said, we got to cut into the summer break. And the guy who has PTSD from law school couldn't think. It's like, no, maybe what you do in your classrooms or your surrounding time for the classrooms, maybe that's not gonna, lift all boats. Maybe you just gotta be honest. Maybe you just gotta be honest and say on the first day of school, in the best case, half of you are well adapted to what we want to do here with this education system. Maybe in the best case, half of you pupils are well adapted to that. And the other half of you, tough. We're going to grind you up just because we're not going to waste time to vet you all. We're going to increase the length of the school year because the students are slipping. Of course the students are slipping. Half of them, in the best case, you're going to have half of them well adapted to what you want to do. Because what you want to do has nothing to do with what we evolved to do. We didn't evolve to, in our youth, wake up early and go and pay attention to a bunch of dullards for 6 or 7 hours a day.
Rushing through the front door of the classroom. It's not possible.
No, it's not well suited to our natures.
Go ahead.
Do you have a view on phones in the schools?
Yeah.
Ooh,
phones. Not in the classroom.
No.
Not allowed.
No.
All the time should be on the teacher and the blackboard.
Yeah,
not on
the
phone.
teacher knows. The teacher, you gotta...
The campaign knows this. I try to get...
The amount of enlightenment... Now, I'm saying A to Z enlightenment, not the sort of thing that's gonna make me industrious, but just enlightenment that I've gleaned from my phone versus listening to a teacher, it's night and day. It's night and day. You are my enemy.
Kamala Harris.
You just can't process. You just can't process that for certain people, we're not well adapted to what you want to do with us. We're more adapted to what we want to do with us, and that's enlightenment. And there's no barriers to entry. When we're looking for enlightenment through our phone, we can access any knowledge, any era, any region of the world. There's no barriers to entry when you're looking for enlightenment, the way there's barriers to entry when we're looking to, prepare us to take a test and ace a test, and not even be able to ace it unless we pay for the curricula in advance in the first place.
Campaign in the summer to adopt a national standard of no phones in classrooms.
Fuck you.
I'm a big supporter. Yeah. Because again,
but that's not even the worst part. Like, fine, whatever, I don't care. You want to do that, fine. But you said you want to cut into the summer break. It's like the summer break is not long enough. There needs to be a spring and summer break. You assholes are given so much time to educate 12 fucking years. And you end up with a bunch of know-nothings, not just, philosophically, but also practically in a lot of cases. Because you just want to pull off the unnatural. That's what you want to do, you school people. You want to pull off the unnatural. It's unnatural to teach a bunch of, young, dumb, and full of cum teenagers to foist them into classrooms and make them pay attention to a bunch of boring turds for 6 or 7 hours a day. It's unnatural. You get a few years, per me, you get a few years very early on. You got to be honest with the people. It's not about them. It's about them pulling their weight, too, because there's a whole tax system to uphold. There's a whole tax system. So just be honest with the kids. That's why they're there, because we're in debt. But you're not going to be honest. You're going to make them all think that it's about them actualizing them. Education is here to help you self-actualize. Bull fucking shit. And you don't have the fucking courage. And even the guy who has PTSD, from his law school can't fucking figure out that he needs to give you pushback.
Not in the classroom. Not allowed. All the time should be on the teacher and the blackboard, not on your phones. Get rid of them. I've been in fact, I don't want to say it. The campaign knows this. I try to get Kamala Harris's campaign in the summer to adopt a national standard of no phones in classrooms. I'm a big supporter. Because again,
how did Alex Jones put it? You are my enemy. Yeah, you are my enemy, Rahm Emanuel.
You teach. You're having the teacher become a policeman. That's not the job of the teacher.
No.
You mentioned the Kamala Harris campaign. Can I ask?
Do I have to? This is
okay, let's not make it personal. Let's just at the highest level of generality you want. Lessons learned. I mean, so you were the candidate recruiter in 2000.
She cackled and she shouldn't have cackled, and she was too afraid to insult the very, very, very sensitive Joe Biden.
This guy, this spirit, this smiling, leering devil that thinks you can't see what he is your enemy. Period. All the narcissistic, devil-worshipping filth. I see you, enemy. I see you, enemy. 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 You are my enemy.
Two cheers for AJ, but hang on.
The spirit, this smiling,
no, hang on. It's a long rant.
He wants to control
every aspect but not him. No.
He is a coward.
It's the wrong insider, AJ. It's Rahm Emanuel. It's not Brian Stelter.
Sack of anti-human trash. I pledge before my heavenly Father.
No, it's you got the wrong insider, AJ. But then again, you always get the wrong insider to lash out on. Although I'm sure Brian Stelter doesn't have decent views on education either, and liberating the child. I'm sure he wouldn't want to liberate the child. But you accuse him of being a pedo. That's wrong, just because of how he looks. No, you need to do this rant on Rahm Emanuel, AJ.
I will resist them.
Then I'll become a member of your cult.
The way I can. These people are the literal demon spawn of the pit of hell. Look at him. And you know what? He is better than you if you keep letting him run your life.
Yeah, Rahm Emanuel is better than you if you, as a kid, just roll over and let him set the standard for how your life is structured. Rahm Emanuel is better than you if you let Rahm Emanuel and his whole mindset intimidate you as a young person, as a pupil, and make you think you got to do a bunch of schoolwork all the time. Even when school's out, you got to do a bunch of schoolwork in the form of homework. Talk about Orwellian speak. Homework. Oh, it's homework. No, just fucking Orwellian speak to get him to mold you to be like them. It's enemy.
your kids, he runs the schools.
Yeah, he runs the schools. Yeah, this guy runs the schools. Well, no, he doesn't run the schools, but you know, the bid works.
And you know what? He is better than you if you keep letting him run your life. He runs your kids, he runs the schools, he runs the banks. This guy.
Hall monitor. You need a hall pass. You need a hall pass. We're going to teach you about Orwellian speak in school. No, we're not, actually. We're going to scantily mention Orwell. We're going to mention him here and there. But then we're going to kind of not figure out that, you know, the whole hall pass thing, that's fucking Orwellian.
This spirit, this smiling, leering devil that thinks you can't see what he is.
Let's slow him down.
He is your enemy. Period. All the narcissistic, devil-worshipping filth. I see you, enemy. I see you, enemy. You are my enemy.
Aren't you, though? All right, it's over now.
And I swear total resistance to
Oh,
you
it's
and
not.
everything I've got.
It's not over yet. Oh, it's the Turks.
He's a lunatic.
It's the Turks. It's the Turks.
Disputes that he's a lunatic.
It's one of the strands of genocide deniers. It's the Turks. Because it's all, I couldn't find the actual clip. I just kind of, found the Turks covering it. I couldn't find the actual. I remember the clip. It was like almost like 6 years ago now, longer. But what was it? It was like 2018. But yeah, you can't find the actual clips. You just find all these proggy channels who cover him because he's easy pickings.
We have to reimpose a minimum of 5 days. If it was up to me, I'd reorganize the school year-round so you don't have the summer.
Not the summer.
Yeah.
Look at those dead eyes.
Slide.
Not the slide. No. Enemy. The dead-eyed enemy.
Yeah.
Eyes so dead.
Slide.
Yeah, they always have the dead eyes when they don't understand just how precious the summer is for the kids. The dead-eyed enemy. I have looked into the eyes of the dead-eyed enemy. But I won't say anything about hatred because it's not about hatred. It's almost June, so it's the anti-hate month.
Talk about.
It's the anti-hate month.
Different subject.
No, it's all the same subject.
As dealing with absenteeism that has now become chronic, and it's now in the high teens.
And what if you just learn more? What if you just learn more while you're doing your absenteeism? Not necessarily something that's going to impress an employer, not necessarily something that's going to look good on a resume, but you learn more in the way of being enlightened and actually self-actualized. See, there's actual self-actualization, Emmanuel. And your dead eyes just can't grasp it. Your dead eyes just can't
pick your number.
Yeah, see, I found the
year
summer.
round, so you don't have the summer.
No, not the summer
slide that everybody in educational fields talk about. But
you owe me, give or take, 12 years of my life. Not you, literally, but your mindset owes me, give or take, 12 years of my life. And I want him back.
That's a different subject. As dealing with absenteeism that has now become chronic, and it's now in
some of the best times of my life were when I was doing the absenteeism stuff. And you'd retroactively wipe it all out, wouldn't you, Emmanuel?
The high teens.
And why am I not supposed to hate you again? Because it's say no to hate? No, I'm going to say yes to hate, but based on what people actually think and their mindset and their myopia. Yeah, there's reasons for hate. There's never any cause for ill will, but there is a cause for hatred. And it has to do with what people actually believe, their stunted mindsets, and their myopia. And they're wanting to spread their myopia outward. And that's why hate is justified.
I
I just want to play one clip for you for fun.
So do I. So do I.
Children will be taught to love America. Children will be taught to be patriots. Children will be taught civic values.
The deadness of his eyes matches the slowness. The deadness of the eyes matches the slowness with which he does not speak. He speaks faster, fair enough. You got me there, Magas. He does speak faster. But the deadness of the eyes matches the dullness and just the programmatic nature of the thoughts, as it were. The thinking that goes into not the ideology. It's not an ideology. It's just a groveling to the king
to promote communist ideology.
Because there's two things in the world. There's love of America and there's communism and there's nothing else. Oh, I just started exporting the Psychopaths Propagate video, but you know what? It's way late. 2:31. It's way late. And I forgot to do the thing I did with the US election. It's now the Canadian election is in progress. And I forgot to do my LARPy. Ooh, live. It's live, up to the date. Only on No Avail. You get the live, up to the date crap. So let's see. Let's see who's got the lead, right? Because I'm sure there's little cues we already have, right? It's like, you know, it's 5:32 over on the East Coast. So the East Coast has... Right, the East Coast must have some kind of a indicator of... sure, let's see. Oh, maybe I should stop the export and include this. If this ends up being
bring in CTV News political.
If this ends up being an edifying segment,
Care, formerly.
Jagmeet, why are you so delusionally optimistic? Why are all these other parties that are clearly, you know, like polling in the single digits? Why do their front runners keep clinging to desperate hope? It's not just Jagmeet. It's like pretty much all the, you know, outsider parties. They just cling on till the bitter end.
Leader of the NDP, who's joining us now. Good to see you, Tom. I'm just going over the number of ridings, 348, looking at some of the polling numbers as well. You and I have talked extensively over the last 37 days. What do you think?
All comes down to this, doesn't it? I think that the very heavy turnout during the advance polls is one of the factors that will determine tonight's result, and it shows a lot of engagement on the part of Canadians. What we said at the beginning of the campaign when we talked about this the first time, Todd, is that, you know, it's a two-way race. Well, that's been reinforced. You can sense that the Bloc, the NDP, the Greens really being pushed aside now. And it being a race where, you know, the Conservatives, even in the most recent polling, it shows them at a level that would have in the past, you know, Stephen Harper didn't get more votes than what Mr. Poilievre was predicted to get. But
tell me who's going to win. Mulcair? It's Mulcair. I can't do it.
If Mr. Carney does best him by the several points that are there, mostly because the Liberal vote is much more efficient. So it comes down to that.
Oh, you're not telling me who's going to win.
The Canadian public, I think we might have a record turnout today. Right. And it's good.
This is why I don't do up-to-the-date live on No Avail. It's because it always just ends up being incomplete. Info is incomplete when you do live.
Democracy, and it's an issue, of course, that has defined this election. The threats from the U.S. president to make us the 51st state. I mean, even saying it sounds absurd, but that's what we're
my export is watching my export.
People have been looking at both major candidaats.
Watching my export is better.
But I think that what's worked out the best for Mr. Carney is his deep experience and expertise in handling a crisis, and that's where we are.
You are coming to us from your home province of Quebec, 78.
No, I'm actually in Toronto today. I'm doing my coverage with CTV out of Agent Courts.
Wait, you're in the same building as me, so I'll have to say hi when I get off the air.
If I wasn't rushing, I'd do a proper LARPy live update segment to end the video, but I can't stop the export now. Gosh, can I even upload this at this point?
It's Toronto, by the way. I mean, it's not only because of the great coverage that CTV's got on Mountain, but it's the Greater Toronto Area.
I want to know
simply and plainly has as many seats as Alberta and Saskatchewan combined.
Oh,
and so those two provinces are back. But it's also an indicator that, from their point of view, they've lost a lot of them towards the Liberals of Mark Carney.
Hey, what about the Bloc?
As of when? What is that? Is that thus far? Those who voted? Just drop out, you stupid turd. Just no. Quebecois? You know, we don't want you guys anyway, because you don't want us.
Bloc in Quebec, and the Liberals and the NDP and the Conservatives, and how that all plays out.
Going to be some interesting 3 and indeed 4-way races.
You know, who is Prime Minister and
live.
majority and minority.
It is unfair to lump these two parties together in the same segment, but I respect
this
the
is
fact
how
that
you know Shop was right.
I know. We only have so much time.
And the idealists were right on time.
I think the Greens are. The Greens used to play.
Time
back in
is
like
a figment.
When Elizabeth May first came on the scene.
But what? It's live.
Played a significant role in the public
But when
discourse.
it's sped up,
I think the luxury.
it just stays sped up.
Back then. The environment and climate change
That's
was
proof.
emerging, and it was a significant issue. I believe that it's got to be hard.
I don't know
for
if
any
it proves
Green Party
all
in
of
the Western world right now to put the
idealism, but it
environment- keep the
certainly
environment on
proves that
the public's radar,
time
things
is
like
a
inflation, cost of
figment.
living,
You can
housing
speed
crisis,
up live, and it keeps going.
It's got to be very difficult. So
I think it keeps going and going. It's the Energizer Bunny.
Congress not a climate denier, neither should we saying. I mean, I know
They were successful in spreading. Yeah, they were successful in spreading. They're kind of getting this on the radar.
Give me a break. Oh, okay. I guess.
And now they just.
I guess it slows down every now and then, but you know, I could have sworn one time I had a live thing and it just kept going and going and not slowing down.
Previous election campaigns.
Oh, it bumped itself back to normal. I've never seen it do that.
I think the two groups who are going to be most frustrated tonight will be the Bloc will be among them in terms of that.
Yeah. Okay.
Because it was just a short while ago we were talking about the Bloc.
Maybe I
either the
overestimated
official opposition or battle for power.
The proof, the strength of the proof. But once upon a time, it just stayed, I swear.
Again, we talked about this at the time. We always overestimate the ability of an election to then predict the next general election and its outcome because the Bloc have gone down.
6 p.m. on the east.
Trudeau hadn't left.
No, I know.
Election night starts.
No.
First polls close in Newfoundland and Labrador.
I think Quebec will be interesting.
That's our easternmost.
Of results that we'll get back.
That's the easternmost province / territory.
Understand.
Newfoundland is the province. Labrador's the territory.
Come in. The splits
or at least,
I'll be looking
if I
for
recall
Sally
correctly.
Craig Chauvet, obviously Rosemont with.
It's very important to recall things correctly, even though no one cares most of the time.
From all corners of the country.
But if you announce that you forgot which one's the province and which one's the territory, but it's never actually relevant. But it's super important not to announce if you forget. But sometimes I forget. But yeah, Yanks, this is what, like a civilized, non-hacky news agency and punditry looks like, it's
is anybody here willing to make predictions?
little to no acrimony, like ever. But yeah, the snappy dress thing is still a must. That doesn't matter. You show up in a shirt, they'll give you the Trump treatment if you show up in a t-shirt.
That is such a coward's answer.
And they get along. It's super tense. They're saying this is the most anticipated, the most tense Canadian election in many, many decades, and yet people are getting along.
Every day on politics.
But maybe the MAGA quarter of the Conservative Party. Maybe they're gonna go MAGA all the way and claim election fraud. There's some rumblings about that. All right, I shouldn't assume people care about the Canadian elections. I shouldn't assume. But apparently Trump's taunting us, so that's why I'm assuming people care. But they only care about the Trump part. I don't understand why the media doesn't like me. It's a speech bubble thing. Oh, it's Pierre. It's Pierre. Pierre doesn't get it. I don't get it either, Pierre. That's a lie. I get it full well. That's why I snipped this. What is it? What is the title? Pierre self-treads. Yeah. Pierre self-treads. But it's not your fault. I get it, Pierre. It's not your fault. It's not your fault you dropped the ball. It was those meddling MAGA-ish Americans and their cult leader. That's why you dropped the ball. But, this choky stuff and you being a bulldog, it didn't help matters. Come on.
It didn't help matters, just like the separatists now, they're not helping matters. They just can't take the L gracefully, right? You just can't take the L. Even the Canadian cons who court a party that's 1/4 MAGA, they just can't take the L. But you ought to take the L. It was the meddling Americans who influenced 1/4 your fan base to be MAGA, even after all the annexation talk. That's what happened. And you just couldn't pivot. You just didn't know where to pivot. That was the problem. But yeah, being a choky bulldog, it didn't help matters. But sure, let's placate you. It was those meddling Americans. Because you would have gotten away with it too, Pierre. You would have gotten away with it too. It wasn't for those damn Yankees. But, you know, I'm kind of stalling toward the final stage of this video. Because the final stages of this video are all kinds of inappropriate, and I'm just afraid to get there. But you know, I fell asleep on election night, and I'm going to talk about it. I'm going to talk about how I fell asleep on election night, and that's why I'm doing this now in this follow-up video. I wanted all this to be out before the election, but anyway, I explain all that coming up. But also, it's an incredibly unsafe last part of this video, just so everyone knows. It's an incredibly risque part, but it's okay because it's like. It's our 2.5 now, so it's fine. It's safe. No one's watching.
I too can echo the sentiments of the chief here before me. That we thank you for bringing us together as treaty people to stand and oppose this. Yesterday, you made 4 demands to the Prime Minister of Canada. That was a no-no because you gave him a time limit till the 2026 to get their things in order. But you will not do what you want without the approval of the treaty people. You talk about a reset with Canada, you must reset with the indigenous peoples from Turtle Island.
Slow down.
Bill 54, this is what we think of you.
Oh.
You're garbage like that. This is treaty land.
It's more than contempt signaling. It's.
And we stand on it today.
But I can't do it. I can't do it. I can't do it. Only they can. Only they can. And just think, because I'm not going to do the graphic. I'm giving myself too much work here. I'm not going to do the graphic, but think about Zuckerberg in the metaverse. You know, that's like the only Facebook-related thing I've seen over the years, because you couldn't escape it. It's another one that's too long for the video, so it's going to be later, but, you know, I want to do the important chunk now. It was all over YouTube. Him entering the metaverse. Yeah, we all remember that. And it was like the gayest thing ever. And I'm like, as a guy, you're going to use... You know, so the problem is not what I said. The problem is that most progs to this day still think that that's enough to convict one of homophobia. How did You're going to keep using Facebook. How did I put it? How did I put it? The gayest thing ever. Yeah. And I'm like... So I'd love to do the whole thing, but it's way too long. So I'll just do the important chunk to set up the next segment. But, you know, most progs... Because of how I said it. As a guy, you're gonna keep using Facebook. You've seen it. You've seen Zuckerberg in the metaverse. And it's literally the gayest thing I've ever seen. So I used literally. I shouldn't have used literally, but we all know Zuckerberg's not gay, right? So one should afford the speaker in these kinds of circumstances. One should afford the speaker more charity. Because I can't literally be talking about gayness. I'm not homophobic, I'm just nostalgic. And this is how we used to refer to lame shit back in the day. So, you know, I'm not homophobic, I'm just nostalgic. And like, how can any guy use Facebook? But they just keep using Facebook. But I think here Orwell describes. Yeah, so that's interesting. But yeah, so you know, there's still this kind of I'm gonna go to war on words and whether words should be, you know, whether we ever need to walk on eggshell on words. I'm about to go to war. That's coming up next on No Avail with Steve Shives of all people. He's so bad. I can't believe how bad he is.
Not Carney. I snipped these two together because I wanted to do a bit on Carney after I do a bit on Steve Shives. Steve Shives, Shivy, back in my algorithm. This guy is so bad. He's everything that's wrong. You know, distilled in one person. Sometimes it happens. In one person, everything is just there and it radiates the sickness, whatever. I won't call it a virus. Other just awful people have called it a virus, but I'll just call it a sickness. And a kind of self-stunting and a kind of assigning of power to words that they ought not have. You're every bit as fragile as the religious are, as it pertains to certain mere words. With them, it's blasphemy. With you, it's bigotry and vulnerability. And just fucking sacrilege about protecting people from words in the way of words being slurs. That's what it means. I'm gonna explain much more. Yes, it is weak, Steve. It's weak as fuck. You'd look weak as fuck in a debate with me on wokeness. This is just in case there's any messengers. You know, I don't confront. This is about as confrontational as I get. I snip images where I want to transition to Carney. It just happened last night. I was supposed to upload the video, but I passed out. You know, I got home and I'm like, I'm not gonna do the video again because I'm recording stuff. And I'm recording stuff because I saw Steve Shives back in my motherfucking algorithm. He's how I found out about the Bill thing. And he was like the worst judgy bitch on the Bill thing. The Bill Maher going to, you know, dine and wine with the fascist. And Steve Shives like, let's do an ultra judgy, bitchy video explaining to people that Bill wined and dined with fascists. And so there was just another fascist at the table. And I'm going to be really bitchy about it for like 30 minutes. Like, no, Steve Shives. Bill was just imprudent. How did I put it? Bill's lucky he's not in Salvador. He could have gone to El Salvador on a whim of the shyster to end all shysters. But that's not what Steve said. Steve just scolded Bill. Scolded. It's like Bill just thought he had a job to do. Bill Ma. You know, that's how this creature wound up back in my algorithm. I clicked this fucking Bill Ma did bad thing by dining with Trump video, and now he's back. And then I snip it and I rant about it. But all he was just a judgy bitch. But it's like, no, you both share the same illusion to one or another extent. You both have your own approaches to activism. Your approach is just to assign power to words, Steve Shives. You know, you believe the marginalized are who they are, framed as the marginalized. And you believe that they ought to cower to words, and you're there to protect them from mere fucking words and utterances. And even discourse over, you know, eugenics, some hard-nosed discourse that doesn't have to be racialized. It never has to be racialized. But, you know, if some push it, you know, don't censor them. I wouldn't. I don't care about that stuff. I'm just saying, Steve Shives, you're another person who just uses eugenics willy-nilly, freewheeling. It's even worse than what you do with these, you know, let's cower to mere words, let's call them slurs, and even the R word now. Can't use 90s slang, innocuous 90s slang. It's now the R word. Steve Shives is here to uphold all that shit, thinking he's doing anyone any favors. It's like the fucking toddler who falls down and doesn't start crying right away. The toddler or whatever, the 2-year-old maybe, starts crying when they've assessed their environment. They've scanned and they've seen mommy and daddy worried, and then they throw a fit. I've made mommy and daddy worry. That's what you do to these people, making them think that, you know, we have to say the R word. You know, I'll judge anyone on moral grounds who hurls racial slurs at outgroup members. I'll judge them. I'll pass moral judgment. You know, but I'm not going to be such a scold about it. I'll just explain to them. When they shouldn't hurl, you know, exactly to the outgroup, you know, the individual that's now been rooted out as among that outgroup. They shouldn't hurl any malign racial epithets, you know, but no matter who they are, you know. Some whiteys want to be sensitive about honky.
Yeah, why not take that seriously? Oh, that wasn't structural. Yeah, you're brainwashed by terms like that was and wasn't structural. And you engage in all kinds of Manichaean binary thinking. You concoct false binaries between the marginalized and the non-marginalized, and essentially between the whites and the non-whites, don't you, Steve Shives? Shivy was skeevy on wokeness. You would look weak as fuck, Steve, in a debate with me on wokeness. I would just utilize these records. Look at these. This is a dynamic duo. I just utilize this. Like, yeah, they always challenge you, these stupid, vapid progs. Like, no one can define wokeness. Yeah, this is what wokeness is. Wokeness is the stupidity of believing that Apu from The Simpsons is an affront to anything and that he ought to be, whatever they did with him, scrapped or revoiced. Yeah, that's wokeness. And yeah, it happens more in brown dames are insecure. I've never known a man to complain about the character Apu. I've never known a man to complain that. No matter the color. Maybe some white men, I guess. I guess a man like Steve Shives would probably sign off on the wokies on the Apu thing. But no, it doesn't mean weak to be made. To be made? To be made like you're the butt of the joke, because there's Apu in The Simpsons. And he sounds, and I'm going to be real here, he sounds far more pleasant than some of the others. Apu from The Simpsons? I don't know how he's voiced now, but I can assure you. The classic Apu, I think it was Hank Azaria, well, he sounds far more pleasant than some. And some, mixed in with some others, but, you can read between the lines. Apu sounds adorable. Some just sound, I don't know, squeaky and dorky and nasally and seemingly here for years, but the past tense of hold, seemingly here, this is what Canadian, it's not just about these, housing costs and all this stuff and demand not keeping up because of the abundance of folks. It's the abundance of folks here. We have an abundance of Volk in Canada because Trudeau miscalculated. He thought all jobs need to be done. But it's not just that's caused all these, surges in things and, just a kind of a race to the bottom in a lot of, especially if you're one of these, grunty people, you're not, grunty work people. I mean, it's just a race to the bottom. But beyond that, the past tense, you can be here for years and you can write the past tense of hold is holded. That's what I have to read now when I examine things. The past tense of hold is holded. And I'm not supposed to be disgruntled at what's happened to my country. What's happened to my country? They don't know their helds from their holds, from their holdeds. They don't. There's so many things like this I can convey. But that's not even like that's next level impermissible what I just said. No, it's just even motherfucking Apu made Apu problematic. That's the essence of woke. The essence of woke, Steve Shives, is to make motherfucking Apu from The Simpsons and similar such stuff problematic. There, I defined it. Are you going to defend it? How did that record end? Actual observers. I vividly recall them. I vividly recall the actual proponents, not observers, the actual proponents of this, that Apu ought be scrapped. Actual proponents of this. I vividly recall, and it's brown dames are insecure, especially when they're in the West. I've never known a man to complain about Apu. Maybe I infer some stuff some of the times based on how a person writes when it's just like an anon and I can't even vet the gender. Maybe I just assume sometimes that I just project that, it's one of these whiny bitches. But, it could be a whiny bitchy man, I guess. There we go. There's a whiny bitchy man below Carney. So sometimes it is a white, whiny, bitchy, woke defending man. You're not a real man, Steve Shives. You're not a real man, Steve Shives.
because you defend woke stuff and rationalize, excuses that it's somehow not. It is weak. It is weak to tell them that, yes, they ought to cower to mere slurs. This is compatible with condemning people who hurl slurs. We can condemn that forcefully, but, don't censor it, but condemn it. But then also you can, look to the people who go into, what is it called, anxiety curveball, or, and it's like, it's just a word. It's like you're as bad as the religious who believe in blasphemy. So that's why you'd lose in a debate to me, Steve Shives, and I hereby officially challenge you to a debate. Whatever, if there's some messengers, they can pass it on, but I'm not going to pass it on. But, I can debate a whole lot of people about a whole lot of things. It's just you got back in my algorithm, and I always suppressed going off on this turd. I always suppressed in the past, and I guess I'm just letting it loose now. Sorry, I shouldn't do 10, 11 minutes on Steve Shives. But I snipped the duo because I want to just say, the Carney thing. I woke up at 9 p.m., and not long after, I had to start getting ready for work. This was election night. And I looked as, okay, libs win local politics. Libs win the local national politics. And then I immediately started giving myself grief for falling asleep because I fell asleep during the fucking export. The whole point was to upload it. The whole point was to upload it before the results. And I fell asleep during the fucking export. This is what work is doing to me. And falling asleep during my exports, waking up some 6 odd hours later and going like, well, now shortly after I got to start getting ready for work. I can't upload this. Who the fuck wants to upload a video at 9 p.m. anyway? That export was running slow as fuck, so I probably wouldn't have gotten it up before 5. Let's see how stupidly optimistic I can be. Even on days when I'm dry as a bone. I'm so stupidly optimistic. By 3 p.m., that export was running as slow as fuck, and I convinced myself, yeah, you'll get it up before 4 p.m. You'll get it up before 4 p.m. No, 5 at the earliest. And that's its own death knell. But now it's the day after, and the libs won, and, I'm far more, I care far more about my upload schedule than I do about any of this local national crap. He scrubbed the bat tax, so there you go. Now we can unite as a country. He scrubbed the bat tax. Carney did. But Steve Shives is really vapid.
As your Prime Minister, you betcha. Okay, well, you have to judge after this next section, because I am going to begin with the value of humility, and by admitting that I have much to be humble about. It's true. Over my long... That's not an applause line, it's just a statement of fact. Over my long career, I have made many mistakes, and I will make more. Yes. But I commit to admitting them openly.
It's a godsend to hacks,
to correcting,
right? It's
not an applause line, it's just a statement of fact.
It's a godsend.
Over my long career, I have made many mistakes.
That's the headline. Carney wins.
I will make more.
Carney wins admits. It would be true.
I have made many mistakes.
That's the headline. That's the hit piece.
And I will make more.
Carney admits. Carney threatens Canada with making more mistakes.
What
are you going to do about it?
To correct.
No, they won't quote. They won't quote that part.
And always.
They won't quote. I'm just saying this is how you can be on the level of Dave Rubin, I guess. That level of simplicita. Well, he said it. He said it. So why shouldn't I quote it if he said it?
Underscores the importance.
It's stupid.
Of governing as a team in cabinet.
Should everyone be humble?
Caucus.
Should we be humble 24/7?
And working constructively.
What if we're
What
if we're vexed by others' shortcomings? Should we be humble? It doesn't work, Carney. When you're vexed and annoyed and frustrated by others' shortcomings, ought you be humble or modest? The Channel Shop. An Englishman has observed that merit and modesty have but one thing in common. The first letter. All right.
Parties.
Whatever. Flatter your flock. Flatter your flock. Oh, I'm just like you. I'm just like you. Ah, you are just like them.
As your Prime Minister.
You bet.
Well, no, I did that. What am I doing? What am I doing queuing this up? When I know full well I did that, but it's been a few days and it's just kind of, minimally amusing how he's making him go bonkers. But yeah, for the most part, I freaking did that. Let's never mention the Pope thing on this channel or in your brain. Let's say it's true of your brains too, in my brain. Let's never mention the Pope inwardly and outwardly ever again. But that's impossible now because that just kind of means having to ignore like all of the press for the next however many weeks or months or heaven forbid years. But okay, I did that, but stuff just keeps happening with that. But hey, let's see what else is here. It's the sea serpent. It's the highlight of my mashup of images with bad religions. How much is enough? There was a glorious intermission too. Be not afraid of poverty. And just, be unafraid of fate. Be unafraid because the converse is like unmanly and stuff. So yes, if you want to see the intermission of that glorious video where the serpent is the most glorious part of the image compilation to Bad Religion's epic track, How Much Is Enough? As in be not afraid of poverty because how much is enough? And it's all precarious anyway. This was the highlight, in my opinion, of that glorious intermission. But let's see what else is here. I think I did him too by now. And I mostly did him. There's nothing much to do here. Just Borg standard. He's not Bog, he's Borg. He's a Borg standard figure. So, whatever. Just leave him be. He scrapped the bat tax. No more carbon anything. No more worry about the environment. We gotta deregulate and, be entrepreneurial just to get by as Canada. So, never you mind Carney and his Borg standard. Everything about it is Borg standard. And you're just not a real man at all. Because you do apologia for wokeness of all things. Just of all things, you do apologia for wokeness. Okay, so the sea serpent, but what else is here? Okay, you're done, you're stupid, let's never mention you again. But I'm already failing. No, you don't refer to yourself as some, major figure. No, it's just my Winnipeg adventure, Steve's. No, it's just delusions of grandeur, and he's not even that non-puny. And already he's getting delusions of grandeur. What a turd, but more on you to come. The King man, the man with the speech impediment who, can't figure out that Marx was wrong on religion. Marx was wrong on religion. Steve Boots is the man who really thought, religion. He really agrees with Marx that religion as things that people cope with to avoid the banes of capital, at least psychologically. It's like, no, you fucking retard. It's so that they can cope with the death of their loved ones and cope with their own mortality. It's not what the thing that Marx said. You're so stupid, Steve Boots, but anyway. Who's qualified to comment on the India-Pakistan conflict? Tells you what, it's time for me to be modest. Sometimes I'm non-modest, other times I'm modest. Who's qualified to comment on the India-Pakistan conflict? It sure as shit ain't me. I think I can name, on one hand, all the figures I know from these two lands. How to dismantle a democracy, sure. 3 arrows, sure. I'm sure this will be non-generic and jam-packed with, unique insights, 3 arrows. But it's nice to see that the channels I used to watch are still doing well. But I ain't gonna contribute to it, because y'all's as generic as fook. But at least you hate this turd. So it's still tempting to click, but it's like, no, I ain't got 41 minutes to spare, 3 arrows, but nice to see that you're doing really well.
in all your generic ways and all your, I'm concerned by all the right things ways as per the Prog manual. 3 arrows and many a bread tube, thinkers are concerned about all the right things exactly per the Prog manual from A to Z. Way to go, 3 arrows. I'm glad to see you're still doing well. It ain't me, babe. No. It ain't me you're looking for. But I think just like with the other, with the Jew-Muslim one, I doubt there's a single impartial, unbiased, even aspirationally neutral, clear-headed voice anywhere in view. I doubt there's a single one. Because it's mostly, it takes the same form as the Jew versus Muslim conflict. And fuck you and your delusions of grandeur. Okay, I think this is how YouTube Shorts work. You flip your phone from horizontal to vertical, and then you hit record, and you're ready to do YouTube Shorts, right? Like a lot of people do these YouTube Shorts. They don't even upload long videos as it is. Like their normal videos are around 10 minutes, but when they decide to do short ones, they call them YouTube Shorts. But I don't have the stomach to do anything short. So my YouTube Short is just gonna be within the much longer video. But because it's in the form of a YouTube Short, I have to be really banal and boring and underwhelming and just not saying anything the least bit interesting, which for me is going to be hard to do. But maybe even I can muster being all lame because it's a YouTube Short, and it's not that I see compelling regular YouTube videos all the time, right? But at least some of the time in some of the videos, something interesting is done or said, right? In the typical, horizontal camera film videos. But when it's vertical filmed, and I've been kind of on a binge, I've been on a torture binge. It's like I lost a bet watching YouTube Short after YouTube Short after YouTube Short. And not one single solitary second made for compelling watching. And I guess I'm going to keep watching them because they're every bit as algorithmically infectious as non-YouTube Shorts, as the YouTube longs. But, I kind of thought I should just stop watching YouTube videos altogether because even, regular videos, you don't see anything compelling most of the time. But with the shorts, it's all of the time. It's all of the time. At least when they feature humans. The YouTube Shorts are good when they feature animals. So, I guess there's exceptions too. But when it's humans, and especially when it's humans trying to make some point and trying to be persuasive, a la YouTube Shorts, it always fails. Anyway, I'm just in a pissy mood. They did the stupid commemoration thing at work in late April. It was the 28th. On April 28th, I don't know why I remember the date, but on April 28th, that Filipino festival, which was a local thing here, there was this Filipino gathering thing, and, this crazy guy drove into it, and it's like 11 are dead. And so it's really bad, but at the same time, there's all kinds of bad stuff. There's all kinds of bad stuff all the time going on. And, it happens to strangers. So I'm of the mind that, a stranger is a stranger is a stranger is a stranger. Strangers they're just that. They're strangers. I can recognize it sucks when horrible things happen to just people. But I'm not going to feel it because they're strangers and I can be honest about it. But see, the people I work with, because it was a local thing, they didn't know anyone who got killed in this, this crazy guy who drove into the Filipino crowd. They don't know anyone, but they still felt like not only discussing it excessively moistly, but there was an email that was sent. And among the things said in the email was like, if you need to see the work counselor, if you're having a hard time coping with this,
there's a specialist if you need like counseling and, you know, cope time. There's a professional person to help you do cope time. And, you know, I tried to make the point about, you know, a stranger is a stranger is a stranger. And are you guys really shaken? Or is it just the fact that, you know, it's local and we all kind of train ourselves since we're yay high? We train ourselves to pretend to care about the plight of strangers when it's local. Even though we all fucking know that a stranger is a stranger is a stranger, and you're not really heartbroken. You're not really heartbroken because horrible things happen to strangers all the time. And yes, they're fellow whatever Vancouverites or something. But most of these people who are, you know, at work now, you know, they're not exactly lifelong Vancouverites anyway. A lot of them are fresh off the boat, so it's like they have double reasons not to be all moisty about it, but they are. So I just kind of want to point out that, you know, my points went nowhere. I couldn't persuade them. They just probably thought I was a psychopath. But I took care of that because I kind of, you know, I did some throat clearing, pointing out that, oh, no, it's not that I'm a psychopath. It's just that I know that, you know, as a stranger is a stranger. Come on, let's all just admit it. A stranger is a stranger is a stranger, even when they're locals and horrible stuff happens, right? All we need to do is just declare it was a horrible thing. Let's not pretend, fellow work people who are moist about this crap. Let's not pretend that we're that distraught by it just because it's fellow Vancouverites and it's nearby, you know. I'd give less pushback if you all were this distraught over the Gaza stuff. But anyway, so yeah, it's also their dames, so maybe that's why. It's just stupid dames at work, and just more evidence that dames can't be reasoned with, especially when some, you know, when Filipinos get hurt. You know, the dames are really especially, God, don't go after Filipinos. If you go after anyone, don't go after the Filipinos. The dames are especially moisty when Filipinos get targeted. Hey, look, I made it entertaining. I just wanted to be lame, and because it's a YouTube short style thing, but I guess I made it somewhat entertaining because I always think back to something, right? I always think back to something that I shouldn't have to deal with, but end up dealing with. But anyway, thus concludes my experiment in YouTube Shorts. But you get to see me, so maybe that's not that much of a waste, you know. I must admit, it's easier when I'm directing. So you can't direct when the camera's on me. You can't direct, and you gotta watch how you comport yourself, and you gotta, you know, actually maybe shave, which I don't do as often these days, and you gotta maybe, you know, not have your hair be completely fucked up when you camera's facing you. So that's why I like to do it the other way. I like to be on the attack, and I like to direct, but you know, every now and then, I guess I'll do a YouTube short that's not really going to be a short. I'm just gonna flip my phone. It's gonna make my phone vertical. Wait, where's the stuff? Man, look at it go. But where's the stuff? I think it's time for Randy. Go. Look at it go. But yeah, this is gonna be a video where clearly there's gonna be a lot of meta stuff.